What's up, everyone? Welcome to GameFace, episode 368 on Sifted Games at sifted.net. I'm Shane Satterfield, the founder of Sifted, and the host of the next couple hours of awesome video game discussion alongside my partner in crime, Matthew Kyle. What's up, Matt?
Not much.
How's the post-Thanksgiving hangover?
No, I don't really get one of those.
Yeah, because I don't either, honestly. Did you have a good Thanksgiving?
It was fine.
Yeah?
I was here and I baked and then went to movie nights the next couple days and brought desserts to them.
Oh.
So.
Did you make the desserts?
Yeah.
What'd you make?
I made butterscotch and chocolate chip honey graham cookies.
That sounds really good. I love butterscotch.
And chocolate mousse cheesecake.
Oh, that sounds good too. You got any leftovers?
Actually, I'm going to make you take the rest of the cheese.
Nice.
Because
Awesome.
I've had enough at this point.
You've reached the breaking point.
And it's only going to last another day or two. So.
Yeah. Matt and I, behind the scenes, actually, we share confections with each other all the time. Like, my wife will make cookies or muffins or whatever. I'll bring them over to him, and then sometimes he offloads stuff on me. It's a nice little symbiotic relationship we got going. Because I am definitely not sick of that cheesecake. I will be happy to eat it and provide a review for it in exchange for your hospitality. So, hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving and you had a great week. I did not spend it with my family, but I did make an awesome dinner. I went and got myself a nice filet steak at the store that I made myself, and I made a bunch of side dishes. I had a great Thanksgiving, watched football, relaxed. In fact, it was very nice to have a couple days off. Thursday and Friday, I had off from Sifted. It was nice to have a couple days during the week off for the first time in a really, really long time. But I hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving full of awesome food, awesome friends, awesome family, awesome football, if you're into that kind of thing. I should also mention the Steelers won yet again. They now have 7 wins on the season, Eric Cartmenez. They are 2 wins away from me winning the bet. I think they have 6 games left or something. They need to win like 2 games in 6, which could come down to the very last game still. But I'm feeling pretty good at this point. I only need 2 more wins from the Steelers to win that bet with Eric Cartmenez. But again, they could go on like a 4-game losing streak, and I would not be surprised at all. So we'll see how it goes. As of right now, I'm okay. Hopefully you guys, again, had a great Thanksgiving. You enjoyed yourself, the time off with family and friends. I realize a lot of you guys are in Europe. And do they even have like any semblance of a similarity to Thanksgiving in Europe? I don't think they do they?
I guess, I don't know. I'm sure there's like harvest festivals of some kind.
Maybe, yeah. Rustic fall, whatever.
Oktoberfest is not super different, I guess.
Okay, yeah, that's actually a good point.
That's all it is a harvest festival.
Yeah, just celebrate the fall, basically. Yeah. That's all it is. But anyway, hopefully everybody, all our American sifters, got to enjoy a nice Thanksgiving and some time off. And now we've got this little buffer zone in between Thanksgiving and Christmas where we're finishing out the year. And then we'll be off for the holidays as well. A couple things to mention. We do only have like 2 or 3 episodes left of GameFace for 2023 before we turn the page on 2024. We have this week's show, we have next week's show, we got a couple big games actually next week's show, which is kind of surprising. And then we may have one more episode before our game of the year. It'll depend on if we have content, obviously. It was tough to put a show together this week. If you're on Sifted and you use Sifted and you check out a lot of the podcasts that we curate, you can see over the last week, either they didn't publish episodes, or if you look at the topics, they've been like, oh, okay, because it's been a slow release week. This is kind of this, like I said, when November started, the end of November was completely barren. They really front-loaded a lot of the games in the first couple weeks of the month. And then we have a couple novelties in December, some bigger-ish games that are coming out. We have Avatar from Ubisoft coming out. We have Dragon Quest Monsters coming out, the Switch exclusive. And then that's pretty much it for 2023 as far as big to semi-big games. So we'll see if we can squeeze another episode of GameFace in there before we do our Game of the Year, end-of-year celebration that we always do here on Sifted. We'll see how it goes, but bottom line is we only have a few episodes left of 2023, and what an amazing year it has been. That's all I can say. It has been an absolutely incredible year of video game releases and other stuff as well. How are you feeling, Matt, as the holidays are approaching?
Fine.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Well, you have any plans yet for Christmas?
The usual. We'll see.
I got my flights home. My flight leaves on the 18th. So guaranteed, nothing's going to be happening with us from the 18th forward, at least as far as GameFace is concerned. I will pre-produce a bunch of Pactor Factor episodes, a bunch of Ask Shane Anything episodes, and those will be going through our channels while I'm gone after the 18th, but GameFace will be off from that point until like the first
two more episodes.
So there's 2 more, is that it?
Yeah, the 5th and the 12th are the remaining Tuesdays.
Well, if you remember, a lot of times we do our Game of the Year on like a Saturday instead of like on our normal GameFace. So it'll depend. Like if we can do another episode of GameFace, there's content to do an episode, we will. We will squeeze another one in, and then we'll do our Game of the Year on a Saturday. If we can't, then we'll probably just do our Game of the Year, end of the year episode on our Tuesday as normal. As I always say, follow Sifted on Twitter, at Sifted Games, or obviously you should use Sifted at sifted.net.
Because the 12th is the Tuesday after Game Awards.
Yeah.
So that will be...
Yeah, I fly out the following Monday. Yeah. So there is a chance we could maybe do it the Saturday before I leave on Monday, the Game of the Year stuff. Again, it's going to depend on if there's enough content to do another episode of GameFace. I really don't think there's going to be, but we'll see. Something could happen. You never know. And where does I guess the Game Awards will fall into... That would, as usual, will fall into that last episode.
I just said the 12th is the show after the Game Awards.
Yeah, because the 7th...
And the show after Avatar.
Yeah, because the Game Awards are next Thursday, and then we would have it in the show the following Tuesday, and that would probably be the last episode. So, yeah. Same stuff we deal with pretty much every year as we wrap things up here at Sifted. And I just want to thank all you guys, no matter how you decided to support us, whether it's with money or with reviewing the show or any of the other stuff that you guys can do. We appreciate all of it. If you are new and you are checking out the show for the first time and you want to support us, or maybe you've just been sitting on the sidelines for a long time, head to patreon.com/sifted. That's SIFTD. If you pledge $4 or more per month, you get all our content early. You get GameFace 4 days early, Pactor Factor a week early. That's the best way to support us if you want to. With that, I think it's time for us to get on with our housekeeping. Not a lot of big stories this week. And you will notice we do have a new lower third for the holiday season. We have a QR code that will lead you to our donation page. If you want to buy us a beer for the holidays, a lot of people watch GameFace all year on YouTube, and then they'll reach out to me over the next few weeks and say, hey, like, I don't want to be involved with Patreon. I don't want to subscribe anywhere, but I want to help you guys because I love the show. And they'll just give us like a donation, a big chunk of money to thank us for the whole year of episodes. This is your time to do that. That QR code is on the screen right now. If you just scan that with your camera on your phone, it will take you to sifted.net/donate. And there you can just plunk in any amount of money that you want, and you can pay with your credit card in like 130 countries. You can pay with PayPal or whatever. So if you're someone who's like, I don't really want to deal with Patreon, but I want to thank the people who have been giving me great content this year, that's a great way to do it. And again, that QR code will remain in our lower thirds until the end of the year to make it easy for you guys if you want to help us out. We'd appreciate it very, very much. And again, you can just give us $1 if you want to, or $5-10 if you just want to buy us a beer for the holidays. Whatever you want, we appreciate all of it. And with that, let me put my glasses on so I can read my notes, and let's get ready for housekeeping. We're going to kick things off with Insomniac. Insomniac obviously just wrapped up Marvel's Spider-Man 2, an amazing game, definitely a Game of the Year contender, which we'll be getting into here over the next couple weeks here on Sifted with our Game of the Year awards. But a big project that took them quite a while to complete. They did an amazing job on it. Very clean code for a game that's that big and that intricate and that intertwining. In fact, I think I had maybe one bug the whole time I played that game.
Yeah, not much, despite what the internet would have you believe.
Right. Well, again, I think a lot of times the internet is a bunch of fanboys. So
it's very interesting. It does seem to have heated up a bit now that the Xbox has some exclusives to talk about, where like anyone who was going on about how buggy or terrible Spider-Man 2 was, you look at their timeline and it's like weird Xbox. I'm like, what is this?
Yeah,
like,
it still exists.
Yeah, it's like weird and cultish and focused on like weird corporate shit, and you're like, I know you don't have anything to really play, but like this is odd, you know.
Well, I'll say one thing.
Even as someone who put 140 hours into Starfield, I'm like, you guys are way too into Starfield.
Yeah, I like find another game.
Like really not willing to admit that there's some shortcomings there.
Well,
nothing is more space travel-y than fast travel.
Yeah.
It just bizarre, and it was like without any exceptions. It was just like some guys bashing Spider-Man 2. Look at their timeline.
Xbox.
they're an Xbox person. Like it's like, really?
It's old as time, Matt. The console wars, and I hate to admit it. We are going to fan the console wars a little bit on today's episode, not intentionally, but I think one of our topics just inherently will kind of do that. But you're right. Like, there is a revival of the console wars going on right now because Microsoft actually has something to, like, stand up for at this point, I guess. So it'll be interesting to watch and see how that plays out. But anyway, back to the story. So Insomniac just wrapped up Marvel's Spider-Man 2. Objectively a great game. I don't care what the fanboys say. And now everyone is turning their attention to their next game. And their next game is Marvel's Wolverine. At least we think it's their next game.
They have 2 teams, so the other team might either be working on Wolverine or the other team might be doing something we don't know about for the last couple of years.
Yeah, I think most people think it's going to be Marvel's Wolverine. So people have started asking Insomniac when they think this game might be completed. And unfortunately, we got that answer this week, and Insomniac is saying right now it's not coming until 2025.
It's actually a year sooner than I expected.
Yeah, you're right, actually. I kind of thought I had no illusions that it was going to come out next year. Like, none.
That was always ridiculous.
Yeah, but apparently a lot of people thought that might be the case, Matt, and are very disappointed to find that this is still 2 years away. Do you think that this is going to be built with the same framework as Spider-Man, and it'll be like an open-world Wolverine game?
That would be my guess. Although I have to admit, like, Wolverine does not lend himself to traversal quite the same way. Mm-hmm. So I could see
he can jump pretty high. He can't jump as high as like a skyscraper, though.
He does have some super strength due to being able to lift his skeleton, but he can't really jump or run that fast. He weighs 300 pounds.
Oh, that's right, because of his titanium. Adamantium,
yeah,
sorry.
Like like, I don't know. Like, he'd have his motorcycle, probably, more than anything else. I could see them doing something more of a Ratchet and Clank structure with it, or it's like areas.
That seems to make more sense for this IP. Mm-hmm. Not that I wouldn't want to see a Wolverine open world game.
No, but like it just feels like I don't know how you'd make that. You'd inevitably draw comparisons to Spider-Man, and it's never going to live up to that.
There was that one Wolverine game that was kind of like pseudo open world. What was that called? It was actually pretty good.
Well, the Wolverine Origins one?
Is that what it was? It was by Activision, I think.
Yeah, it was the one that Raven made.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was an open world. It was God of War.
Yeah, it's like I said, pseudo open world.
Well, no, it was like classic God of War.
Oh, was it? I thought there was kind of like open city areas in that game. No, I'm remembering
that was a pretty linear game. That was a very linear game.
Yeah,
it was very good.
It was better than I thought it was going to be.
Because the movie, it was the movie tie-in, but then the movie got delayed a year, so Raven had a year to polish it, and it actually turned out to be one of the best superhero games ever made.
Funny how that works.
They were allowed to make it like M-rated,
right?
Which the movie wasn't. Yeah. In the end, the movie,
which seems insane.
Well, it was
there would be.
Well, it was going to be an R, and then they chickened out and made it a PG-13, but it was too late to change the game because they'd already given. No,
so we got what we wanted in the game.
Yeah, and they tried. They tried to change it. They tried to make Raven change it. Raven's like, that's not how anything works.
It's too late.
So if you want us to delay it another year, we can do that. But otherwise, like, no, it's an M-rated violent game, and it was great.
It was really good. Yeah, pleasantly surprised by that game.
Yeah. So in this case, Insomniac is actually kind of tackling an interesting predecessor there. Mm-hmm. Like, I know people love certain Spider-Man games and such, and there have been good ones here and there. And there's that weird reputation that Spider-Man 2 has from the 2004 one.
You go back and actually play it now.
Yeah, you go back and play those Mysterio levels and tell me that game isn't trash. Come on, that's a terrible game with a really interesting traversal system.
It's just like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. For its time, it was amazing. You go back and play it now, it's like, yikes.
Yeah, and there's still some cool stuff, but I would say that for my money, the best Spider-Man game pre-Insomniac is Web of Shadows. That's the perfect balance of realistic, Spider-Man 2 versus shortcut arcadey web swinging, plus an open world, and it even ends with the kind of the symbiotes taking over the city, same as in the Insomniac one. Except the Insomniac one keeps its frame rate up. Where very famously, Web of Shadows, we didn't really have time to optimize that last act, and it ran at like 15 FPS at times on PS3.
Yeah,
but it was that's a good one. It's a shame that Activision shut down Shaba Games and didn't give them another shot.
Now Microsoft would own it.
Because I think that second, I think that their second shot at that would have been a really good game.
Probably. Let's check in with our chat for the first time and see what they're saying about this.
I ran into the guy who the founder of Shaba Games at one of Pactor's parties once, and he's still mad about that, as he should be.
People are talking about how they've discovered that, you know, a bunch of Venom stuff was cut out of the game.
Which makes sense, because I was like, one of my reactions to the game overall was like, it's weird that you hired Tony Todd to be Venom and he barely says anything.
Yeah, well, apparently he did, and they just cut it out.
Which is, on the other hand, I was like, well, Kojima hired, what's his name? Kiefer Sutherland, and barely had him say anything. So maybe that's just, you know, how it rolls, but it was just weird that you get that talent and you don't use it.
Yeah. Let's see. Toast9 reminds us that the trailer said 2023 for Wolverine. So maybe that's why people are like, well, hey, like, I don't remember that, honestly.
I don't remember ever having a year.
I mean, we just showed the trailer a bunch of times. I didn't see it in there, but when we run B-roll, we cut out a lot of the BS off the front and the end of trailers, so it may have been there. I don't remember that, though, honestly.
No, I don't remember a year ever being attached to Wolverine.
Vincent also reminds us, if it's the Rift Apart team, it would take probably 4 years to build the game. Yeah. And I mean, they've been working on it in pre-pro for a while now, but...
Well, yeah, but the Rift Apart team is not the Spider-Man team.
Yeah.
So they might have, you know, when was Rift Apart done?
Yeah. And Silkshake reminds us that Wolverine will probably have his bike if it were an open-world game. Mike's Q says 300 pounds and a 990-pound body. Yeah.
I mean, if that, he's 5'3".
Is he 5'3"?
Yeah.
Like officially in canon, he's 5'3"?
In the comics, he's 5'3".
I didn't know that.
Also, I knew it, but I'd forgotten it, and I was reminded of it. The rest of the X-Men learn his name is Logan, which it isn't actually Logan, but originally they learn his name is Logan almost 4 years after he's introduced, after the team is introduced, and except the reader learns his real name, his Logan name, 30 issues before that because a leprechaun says it. Comics.
Yeah.
Leprechauns.
Yep. Clay UK Garage 1988. Some QR code apps don't work. You just use the photo app in your phone. You just have to like act like you're taking a picture of it. It will a little link will pop up. You just tap it. It'll take you to the page. But he's asking, can you go there via the Sifted website? You can. You can just go to sifted.net/donate, and you can be taken to the page as well. It's just much easier, obviously, with a QR code. And so that's why we put it in there. Let's see if anybody checked in with Erebus Jones. Thank you for Twitch Prime. See if anybody else did. Mike's Q, thank you. Toast9, thank you. Quipri, thank you. Shane A28, thank you. Threadzilla, thank you. Rigor Mortis UK, Axel F 1986. You guys are all getting in here. Thanks, everybody. It's at the end of the month. Usually this doesn't happen like this. Glottis021, thank you. Cinetike, thank you. Don Lionheart, thank you. Pedor91, Dazzle369, Rubadubdubs, that's a great name, thank you. Pika Lurvin 47, thank you. And I think we've got everybody. All right, always good checking in with you guys. We'll be back as we go through the housekeeping, but it's time to move on to our next story of housekeeping.
Lynn Jeff 99, while you were saying that.
Oh, thank you, Jeff Lynn. Awesome dude, supporter for a long time. Thanks, man. Let's move on to the next topic for housekeeping. Remember the Intellivision Amico? Tommy Tallarico's little scam that was going on? That Pactor oddly got suckered in by.
That was very weird. I also remember H Bomber Guy's 2-hour expose on it.
Oh, right. Well, Pactor got sucked in.
Which started as a Roblox sound effect history.
Yeah.
Very weird.
Pactor got sucked in because I was actually there the day that this happened. He was at a convention, and he met with me, and we did like a little Pactor thing at the convention. He's like, oh, I got to go meet Tommy Tallarico, go to check out this Amico. And at the time, I was like, oh, okay. Mm-hmm. So he actually got like an in-person demo of the Amico, and that left a big impression on him. But as it turns out, it was pretty much all smoke and mirrors. Like, they got, what, $15 million to like...
a lot, yeah.
On their Kickstarter, whatever, however the crowdfunding worked. And
a couple of crowdfunding attempts, yeah. And then supposedly some investors, but I don't know what... Nobody really knows how real that was.
Yeah, because as it turns out, like Tommy was lying about basically everything. Mm-hmm. He was also, commiserating with like racists online and like.
Well, he said that anyone who doubted the Amico or didn't like the Amico was a gaming racist.
Oh, that's right. But I mean, he literally was interacting with racist people online.
I mean, the grifters end up with.
They always end up there, don't they?
It's weird. It's weird how easy that side of things is to convince of certain things that aren't real.
I never even connected those dots, Kyle. But you're right. As soon as it was like, oh, this is a grift now, suddenly he starts talking to different people who might be able to like help him with his grift. And so Tommy's reputation right now
maybe the people who think Pizzagate is real,
right? Yeah,
might be dumb enough to give me money for this.
Yeah.
Is really turning out to be a winning strategy in a number of areas.
It is, so. Yeah. So Tommy, since April of last year, has not tweeted one time.
Little odd character.
Which means he probably started some other account, and he's got, he's got a burner account now.
Oh, there's a couple of threads that I've seen around on Reddit and other places that like are talking about the Amico and talking about the H-Bomber Guy video. And there are mysterious new accounts that pop up that are definitely him. Like it's
not surprised.
Also, he has a pretty distinct writing style, so you know when you've encountered it.
Well, everybody just thought the Amico was dead. In fact, the people who had invested in it I believe, had just given up and resigned themselves to the idea that they were
I'm
never.
surprised there weren't more lawsuits.
I think there still might be a class action lawsuit coming. And a lot of the people, I think, just gave up and were like, oh, it's just never going to happen. We're never going to get our Amico. It's my money just got basically stolen. Well, here we are in November of 2023, and for the first time since May, Amico updated its website. And it did mention that we're still trying to work on getting that hardware to the people who already paid for it. But the big news is that Amico has now pivoted, Matt. And instead of being a console with games that you buy separately and plug into your console and play it like a console, it has now been moved to an app. And here's the thing, Matt. All the games that they were building for Amico were built on Android. So basically, they're like, we built these Android games. Let's just let people with Android phones run our Android games on their Android phones. There's still no app for iPhones. So there's no iOS app still. They basically are like, we already did the work. Let's just make the money off of these. They're selling the games for $15 a piece. They were originally supposed to be $8 a piece when they pitched the Amico. Or less, right. They're selling them for $15 a piece. But Matt, here
$15 for an Intellivision game?
Yes.
That's crazy.
Matt, here is
10, 20, 20.
Yeah, there you go. Here's the kicker, though, Matt. The kicker is that to play any of the Amico games, you need 2 Android phones. You need one phone to see the game on, to use it for its screen, and you need the other phone to act as the controller for the game. Are you kidding me?
That's dumb.
I mean, it goes beyond
like
dumb.
You can't even make it work with like a Bluetooth controller?
Apparently not.
Amazing.
Because they're inept.
Amazing.
The app is a disaster. It crashes. It doesn't work the way that it's supposed to. Yep. There's only 2 games available right now. Out of all, they said there was supposed to be 20 at launch or something like that. There's 2 games available on the app.
Finally, digital cornhole.
Yeah. What a disaster the Amico has.
And like this could not more obviously be mock-up.
Well, it's Astro Smash is what it is, which was one of the few real hits on Intellivision back in the day.
Oh, sure, but that's not real. Like,
you think these are all faked?
Yeah, that's fake. That's clearly fake.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think Astro Smash might be real, though.
That video was not real.
You don't think so?
Maybe it was a real footage of something later.
Huh. I mean, it's such a simple game to build.
Simple, but it's too crisp.
In the amount of time it would take you to fake it, you could just make the game.
No, that's too crisp. It's too HD.
I mean, it's an Android phone. Phones can display.
Yeah, but like it's being rendered directly to the capture.
Oh, I believe that.
I'm saying.
I definitely believe that.
It's not a real thing.
I mean, you can see these games. Like
most of these games never existed.
Their whole pitch was like, oh, we're going to be the console that families can play on. You put it in a living room and you play locally with 4 players. And they do have kind of these crazy, almost like Dreamcast with the VMU controls. But are they ever going to come out now?
No. Why would they?
Why would they?
I mean, like it's like the Earthworm Jim thing apparently never existed at all. It was just a mock-up video they made, and it's like work on the game never happened.
Wow. It's been well over a year since we talked about the Amico. I really thought we never talk about it again because we shouldn't have to talk about it again. It should have just went away. But they're so desperate now. There was so much money invested in this product that, like, I'm sure the people working there are like, They're probably trying to avoid the class action lawsuits.
It's more like if you put something out, it's easier to not lose the class action.
Or it's easier to defend yourself in the class action. Yeah. Because you can say, oh, market conditions and blah, blah, blah. You can make up a bunch of reasons why you didn't deliver exactly what you said you were going to. But this Amico thing has been a disaster from day one. That has never changed. And here we are in the end of 2023, and it still hasn't changed. So hopefully no one in our audience got fooled into supporting this. Hopefully Tommy Tallarico...
Like this Moon Patrol thing, that's a proof of concept mock-up. That's not an actual game. Like, that's not a real thing.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair...
You never saw that again.
You're right. Some of these games we never saw again. To be fair, though, Pactor did play a ton of the games. Mm-hmm. So they did work on a bunch of them. Which ones? I don't know. But that's another thing that fooled Pactor was like, I played the games, and they had like a dozen of them there, and I was fiddling around with all of them, and it really seemed like... And that was early. Like, they had those games ready to go, like, way early in this whole cycle.
Shark existed.
Yeah. What a disaster. Mm-hmm. There's just no other way to put it. I mean, I can't think of too many products in the gaming industry with more egg on its face than the Amico, the Intellivision Amico, which is a shame.
I mean, it reminded me of the Ouya. I mean, although the Ouya came out.
Yeah.
But, like, it's another Ouya. It's another, Phantom.
Yeah. I forgot about the Phantom, which was the most perfectly named console ever.
Although I played that. I did play the Phantom.
Oh, you did?
I found it in like a tiny room in Kensha Hall one time and played a couple things. It wasn't anything specific to the Phantom. It was like other games that were on other things. But one existed at some point. I can tell you that firsthand. I mean, God knows what was actually in that box. It might have just been a PlayStation stripped down.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you gotta develop a scent for these things. Like, and this thing smelled like a scam from the beginning.
We were all over it right from the beginning, pretty much.
Well, especially because like the business model made no sense. What they were trying to target as an audience made no sense.
It doesn't exist.
It's like oh, there's no game consoles for families. It's like
it's the Switch,
are you
dude.
Fucking crazy?
And if they're just gonna play on their phones or their tablets, like,
and it was kind of like it was kind of like perfect because Tommy's always been such a hater on Nintendo, like even by my standards.
Right.
I mean, this is a man who gave Smash Brothers Melee a 2 out of 10.
Right.
And like sometimes you'd watch Electric Playground, it was just be like, what is going on?
Like, seriously,
over here?
Like did Nintendo murder your mom? Like, yeah, that's crazy.
I mean, and like Vic would get caught up in it too sometimes. Like, I think Vic gave like Melee like a 5.
Right. Because he's like, well, if Tommy's that low,
he's standing next to Tommy.
I can't give it a 10.
Yeah.
It's really.
And it's like, no, you can.
You can.
You can drastically
just like
disagree
everybody
with him.
else did, except for Tommy Tallarico.
And it's just like, and like even without Tommy involved, like, this thing doesn't make any sense. I mean, it's like if you ignore the Switch's existence, I guess, there's a market there.
They figured out though that it's just do it on phones and tablets.
Yeah.
You don't need the console.
There is no gap there.
They're Android games.
Yeah.
They're literally built for mobile. It boggles my mind it took them this long to figure that out. Like,
and why you'd want to pay. I mean, it also was not. It wasn't. I didn't find it a very reasonable price for what it was, hardware-wise.
All the R&D they wasted on the console, on the controllers.
Did they though?
I mean, yeah.
I mean, they made some mock-ups, but was there R&D involved? I mean, like,
yeah, for sure.
Sorta. Like, I don't know how much they actually spent making the fake thing as opposed to wherever
$5 million probably, and then the other $9 million went into their pockets probably. I'm sure Tommy was giving himself a salary of like $1 million a year or something ridiculous. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah. Anyway, stay away from anything that Tommy Tallarico supports going forward. I think that's one thing we've all learned from this Amico disaster. Next up, in housekeeping, get my notes organized here. How do you feel about Bayonetta at this point, Matt?
Me.
After Bayonetta 3, how much did you end up playing of that?
An hour.
Oh, really? So it didn't really hit you?
I didn't like Bayonetta 3 at all, really.
I did.
I'm not a huge Bayonetta fan in general in terms of the games. I like the character. I like kind of the aesthetic of it. But I'm not a big character action person. Like, I find those games mostly tedious.
Yeah.
Like, it's like having to learn a fighting game, except you're not fighting anyone.
Except when you're done with the game, you won't use it again.
Yeah, there's no point to it, really. It's like,
Yeah.
it's like, look at how crazy the style point. Who fucking cares?
Yeah.
Like, did I get through it?
In 2 days,
Then
I'll
I'm
never
fine.
play this again.
Yeah.
And it won't matter. I hear you. I've never thought about that, but you're kind of right.
It just feels like you're entertaining yourself on a level that the game should probably be taking care of.
That's kind of funny, actually. Well, as we know, Kamiya left Platinum Games a month or two ago, and we talked about that here on GameFace as well. But he has this little YouTube show that he's been doing every week because he basically has signed a no-compete clause. So to get paid out his severance, he had to sign a non-compete. And those are borderline illegal at this point. A lot of countries, those are being...
Like, they don't work in California.
Yeah. And then I think it might be United States-wide in the not-too-distant future here. But anyway, in Japan, they are still legal. And so he signed a non-compete, which means that he can't work anywhere for like the next year and a half or 2 years. So he's just doing a little YouTube show to keep busy, basically. And in his latest episode of his show on YouTube, he mentioned that he has not shared he has a 9-game plan for the Bayonetta franchise.
That's an option.
Which, let's just do the math, Matt.
Because it really feels like you ran out of ideas at 2. Yeah. So
well, let's also do the math. Like, that's 6 more games. It took him, 5 years, 6 years to make Bayonetta 3? Dude, he won't live long enough to make that many Bayonetta games.
Well, funny you mention that.
What?
Because he's going to take it to the grave.
Oh, yeah, exactly. So as it turns out, he's not shared any of those plans for what he was going to do with Bayonetta for the next 6 entries before he left Platinum. And he has said he will never share it with them. And per what Matt said, he said he will take those plans to the grave.
It's like, is she going to fight big monsters from other planes of reality?
Right. Or like be multiple dimensions.
In skin-tight, hair-based clothing. Yeah. Like, I think we can handle it from here, bro.
Yeah.
Like, and also, it's like, everyone's making fun of him and, like, it's like comparing him to, like, Yu Suzuki and his Shenmue plan. Like, at least Shenmue was only 5 games.
Right.
And they got 3 of them done.
Well, it's a little interesting that
Shenmue's a little more story driven. There's a little more like you want to know what Yu Suzuki thinks happened.
Yeah.
In that regard, whereas this is sort of like, really, like, I mean, I guess probably there's lore, deep lore in here somewhere if you're a Bayonetta fan, but I'm just like,
There's not.
I don't really see.
There's not, Matt.
I don't really see where I don't really see where you'd play Bayonetta 9 and be like, wow, we've really come a long way, haven't we?
I can't say
she
that
is not the same character she was in Bayonetta 2, let me tell you.
I can't say that I was too disappointed when I learned that there would not be another Bayonetta coming, or particularly that he had plans for It's like, I wonder what happens in the 8th entry that doesn't happen in the 6th entry of Bayonetta. Like... So it's been...
That only he could imagine.
Right. That the hubris with him is he's like, nobody else can imagine anything to do with these characters in this setting. It's like, come on, buddy. Like, I don't know. It's, I think maybe he's feeling a little more self-important. I don't remember any real sales numbers coming in for Bayonetta 3 at all, which means that they probably weren't that great.
Nintendo doesn't really talk about that anyway.
It does. It does, actually. Almost every month, it releases, like, life-to-date sales numbers for almost all its games. It is way more forthcoming than any other publisher with sales of its games. And it's easy to do that.
I never hear any of that.
It's on SIFTD. We curate it all the time. And, in fact, I bookmark a lot of those because they're handy resources to have to go back and look at later. There's a bookmark feature on SIFTD, by the way, if you didn't know. That little, like, flag thing that's next to each story, if you click it, it will save a story to your bookmarks. You can go into your user panel and you can look at all the bookmarks that you've saved. So I bookmark stuff like that. Things like stories that have like all Nintendo sales, all PlayStation sales or whatever. And Nintendo will tell you like almost every month the life-to-date sales. That's easy to do when your games are selling like hotcakes. Not so easy to do when it's the Wii U era. And it didn't happen then, oddly enough, which was kind of funny. So anyway, you think Bayonetta's done?
I hope so.
You think Platinum will do it on its own without him?
Why?
Kamiya thinks they will.
Yeah?
Yeah, he said, as for a fact, he's like, I think they're going to continue it without me.
But it doesn't sell.
I know.
There's got to be better things to do with their time and money.
Well, it depends. I think it all depends on whether Nintendo will fund another one.
Yeah.
If Nintendo won't float the bill to develop Bayonetta 4, Bayonetta 4 is not happening.
No.
They're not going to... PlayStation's not going to fund it. Xbox might, actually.
But does Nintendo own that, or they're just publishing it?
They just publish it. They fund the development. They basically pay for most of the
Usually
development
a
costs.
series that has to jump to a different publisher for every entry is not going to make it to 9.
Usually not.
In my experience.
Yeah. I think
it started under Sega.
It did, yep. I think it may come back for one more entry before they put the final nail in the coffin. I did enjoy Bayonetta 3. I thought it was pretty good. I don't think it was like 5 or 6 years of development good, but I thought it was good. I thought it was one of the better Switch games from that year for sure. And certainly one of the few Switch games that is clearly targeted towards older players, which is something Nintendo's been fiddling with since the GameCube era, and with not much success, I would add. Every time it tries to make a game or publish a game that's a little more mature, it never tends to sell very well. And that's probably shouldn't be that surprising considering Nintendo's audience. So I would say it's 50-50 whether we get another Bayonetta, and I would say it's like 5% whether we get 2 more Bayonettas, and I think it's 0% that we're going to get 9.
Yeah.
Does that seem about right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What else we got here for housekeeping? We got a lot. Lots of little stories this week, not a lot of big stuff. So we talked last week about how some person who used to work at Rockstar posted a blog that basically leaked a whole bunch of stuff about what it was like to work at Rockstar North and to work on Grand Theft Auto 3 and Grand Theft Auto Vice City, and for most people's interest, most importantly, Agent. But you remember, I think was it E3 2006 or 2009 where they unveiled Agent? I can't remember.
I don't know. I was at that party. I want to say it was 2006.
I think it was. And we haven't really heard anything since. So that's why people were very interested to hear what this guy had to say. And basically he just shared some stories about...
That's a remark. Usually if you go to an E3 party that's centered on a particular game, that game does come out.
Usually. Yeah.
But Agent had its own party.
It also had a stage thing during their press conference. And then it just disappeared.
Never happened.
Well, this former employee wrote a blog and basically talked about his time working at Rockstar and Rockstar North, working on the 2 Grand Theft Auto games, but also working on Agent. And he shared a story about how they went overseas. I think they were in the Middle East, and they were taking like photographs to use for the game. And they got basically arrested, and they thought that they had like pornography on their cameras or something, and they had to go to the U.S. consulate in the country to get out. It didn't even really divulge anything about what it's like to work behind the scenes at Rockstar, as far as like working on the game's development, like the creative process, where do the jokes come from, like who decides whether something is like none of the secret sauce stuff got out. He basically talked about things that every developer does. Every developer does that. They figure out where the setting is, they send a team there with cameras, and they photograph it, and they videotape it to make sure that they reference it correctly inside. That's nothing new. But for Rockstar, it was too much, Matt. Rockstar reached out to this poor guy and said, hey, like, you are ruining our mystique by divulging this information publicly.
What mystique?
Now, I'll say this. He did also talk a little bit about what it was like to work on this game, Grand Theft Auto 3.
How do they write 20-year-old humor in 2023 still?
But that just shows you the hubris that Rockstar has. And I'll be honest with you, Matt, like, I think maybe some of the craziest fanboys in the industry are Rockstar fanboys. I mean, they are delusional. They think that Rockstar can do no wrong.
It's also weird to me that like there's fanboys at all because they haven't put anything out in 10 years.
I mean, again, it's flabbergasting. It's like, okay, like I think anybody can make a great game if you get 11 years to make the game. It's like we talk about this all the time with Sony's first party studios. It's like, yeah, they make great games, but they get 7 years to make them. Imagine if any studio got 7 years to make a game. How good would that game be?
And basically unlimited money.
Yeah, like, so anyway, Rockstar, once again, showed its hubris. And
the ping pong game wasn't very good.
The what game?
The ping pong
Table tennis, Rockstar game.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I got raked over the coals by Rockstar for those reviews, too. Because they think every game that they release is a 10, dude. No matter how they are crazy. I remember when they called me about Rockstar Table Tennis, we gave it like a 6 or something, or a 7.
That's about right.
And like, I knew the PR guys, and they're calling me, they're like, dude, what is up with the score? I'm like, what do you mean, what is up with the score? It's a table tennis game, but it's the best table tennis game ever made. That doesn't matter.
Okay.
That doesn't matter, dude. It's not that great of a game, period. Like, the bar is so low
for the best Cheeto I've ever eaten. It's still not a 10 out of 10 in the food realm.
Exactly. I'm just telling you, that's where they come from. Mm-hmm. Like, and I've talked before.
And yet they put out the definitive collection.
Right. And I've talked before about how when we reviewed...
You know what ruins your mystique? Putting that shit out.
Right. Or Max Payne 3, which I've talked about before, about how I had to talk to Rockstar's brass after we reviewed that at Game Trailers. We gave that like a 7 point something, like almost an 8. And they lost their minds and pulled $250,000 worth of advertising from Game Trailers over our review of that game, which is wrong. That is just wrong. But that's Rockstar. They think they can throw their weight around and do whatever they want. A lot of times they bluff. That time they didn't bluff. They're like, you change the review score or we're going to take this money away from you. I told them to F off, and they took the money away. It's just crazy, man. That stuff should not be happening. Now, to be fair, that was 2012, 11 years ago, but they haven't really released anything since either, other than Red Dead Redemption 2. So, anyway, this just gives you a glimpse behind the curtain at what Rockstar is really like. And I know a lot of people think they're the cool guys in gaming and whatnot. They're cutthroat. That's pretty much, if I had to use one word to describe Rockstar, having worked with them for 20-some years, that's the word I would use, is cutthroat. That's the first word that comes to mind for me when I think of Rockstar. So anyway, this poor guy, I mean, honestly, it may have worked out well for him, because he probably got more juice out of it after Rockstar reprimanded him. So my guess is he probably already has a bunch of jobs lined up after all this. So I guess he played his cards right, and it worked out for him. But once again, it's Rockstar showing its ass, which I think is just embarrassing. So it's like, what's the point of working at Rockstar if you can't tell people what you did there to help yourself like move forward in your career? It's crazy that they expect their former employees to not talk about the stuff that they worked on. How are they supposed to get other jobs? So anyway, there you go. Just another glimpse behind the doors at Rockstar. And the funny part is, Matt, like, what he wrote doesn't make Rockstar look bad. Rockstar's reaction to what he wrote makes Rockstar look bad. Oh, the irony. Yeah. So, it's crazy. So anyway, we're still waiting, by the way, for the Grand Theft Auto 6 stuff. Still haven't got the blog post they talked about. Trailer they did say in December, but here we are. We're a couple days away from December, so big news coming soon, I would think, on Grand Theft Auto 6. We'll wait and see. Next up in our housekeeping, unfortunately we can't show you B-roll for this, because what I've discovered over the last couple years is that Keighley does not clear the performances and other stuff at the Game Awards on YouTube. So the last couple years we've run B-roll from the Game Awards on the show, and it is hard to cover the Game Awards and talk about it without running B-roll from it. So we're going to have to do it again this year, or for the first time this year. The last couple years I got lit up with, like, I had to go back and like re-edit the episode and slap bars over top of everything so YouTube wouldn't pick up on the video footage. So anyway, we're not going to show you B-roll of it, but as we said earlier, the Game Awards are on the way. They're next Thursday, December 7th. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yep. So they're coming up. We'll have one more show, obviously, before they happen. But we're starting to get some information. Jeff needs to keep the hype going to keep people interested in it. He did like a big live stream on Sunday for the Game Awards, and a couple things came out. First of all, the Game Awards are beefing up on-site security. We talked about it. Was it last week we talked about the guys that ran on stage?
Yeah.
And how it kind of is like this viral thing that's kind of good for the show. It drives eyeballs to the show. Well, Jeff has decided that they don't want that to happen anymore, and they're going to have security near the stage to make sure it doesn't happen.
It happened in the Summer Games Fest, too.
In Germany, yep. And so my point would be that he needs to beef up his security at all his events, not just the Game Awards, but it does look like that we will have a stage barging free edition of the Game Awards this year, or unless, because that's the thing, it does drive eyeballs. Like, people are like, oh, there's something happening over there. Like, I remember last year my wife alerted me that something crazy was happening on the Game Awards, because she was on Twitter and I was working. Like, I was curating all the trailers as they were running, and she comes back and she's like, what just happened? And I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, some dude just went on stage or something. I'm like, what? Like, I wasn't paying attention to like the awards because I was doing other stuff on the site while they would do that. And she came back and was like, it's all over Twitter and something happened or whatever. So it does work. It does drive people to their broadcast, because instantly I was like, oh my gosh. And I went back to try to, and of course they had already moved on at that point. But it does drive people to the broadcast. So we'll see. It's easy to say that right now, but we'll see if Jeff actually has security guards standing up there, making sure that nobody runs up there. And then the final thing, and this is a big deal actually, that Jeff shared on Sunday, is that they are ditching the whole world premiere thing. It's gone. It is not going to be in the show any longer. I'm guessing it won't be in his other shows for Gamescom or for Summer Games Fest as well. That's a huge moment. He has been using that for I mean, I used it when I worked at Game Trailers for like 7 years. We used it over and over again, and he's ditching it. How do you feel about that?
I mean, I don't feel anything about it. It's just, I guess he's just tired of it being made fun of.
You think that's why he did it?
Probably. I don't see any reason otherwise.
One concern I think maybe that rose up was that maybe some of the other people who are working with Jeff on the shows don't appreciate that their trailers just get sent out and then everyone else gets like that big world premiere moniker. I don't know.
Well, it's either a world premiere or it isn't.
Right. Yeah, I mean...
That's an objective thing.
That's true.
So I don't see any reason to change that because of that.
No.
I think he's just tired of people making fun of it. It doesn't get you anything.
Because people are already there. Like, using that in the show isn't going to drag more people to the show. Mm-hmm. Like, it's the world premieres that get them there. Once the show happens, you don't need it.
Yeah, you don't. We're already in the building.
Yeah.
You're fine.
Yeah, and we're already watching. Mm-hmm. We've already tuned into the stream or whatever. So, a little interesting that he would do that. I mean, I don't think people make fun of it that much. I think most people who make fun of it are pissed off and jealous, typically. They work at other publications, and Jeff gets all the exclusives that they don't get. I think it makes people a little testy. Yeah. I'm not saying you, obviously.
I mean, I see
but
tons of non-industry people making fun of it because it's silly. It's the same thing before every single one. So like if you run like a bunch of ways, it's just like world premiere, world premiere. Like, okay, just say they're all world premieres and save
be done with it.
I mean, you take that header off everything, you save what, 3 minutes? Yeah. The whole show? Like
that's funny. He also said that the show, like last year, is going to be a little bit shorter than it had been years prior. That's good. Like, that show needs to be cut down even more to like 90 minutes. Like,
yeah, you should probably just run trailers and skip the awards at this point.
Well, I'm not saying that.
We all know why we're here.
I'm saying they should cut out a lot of the really small world premieres and just have the big stuff and then have the awards, and you get it done in 90 minutes, and off we go.
No, they'll never cut that down. The purpose of the thing is to show trailers. So.
Well, they'll never cut it down because it's money.
They're not called the game adverts for nothing.
Well, it's like TV networks, like they have this conundrum with sports where they're like, baseball games are too long. Mm-hmm. And people don't want to watch baseball because the games drag on. They're 3.5, 4 hours long. So should we cut the games down and make them shorter? They have like the pitch clock now or whatever. Should we cut the games down and make them shorter? Maybe more people will tune in. However, that gives us less ad inventory to sell. Mm-hmm. And so they could ultimately lose money cutting the games down. It's this algorithm they need to figure out, basically. And I think Jeff is in that same position. He's like, me running all these trailers for these crappy games as world premieres. It's like, is that helping drive people to the show? Probably not. Does it make people turn off the show? Maybe. I mean, it does get a little annoying, let's be honest. And then you go to a commercial, and you're like, is this a commercial, or is this more world premiere? It starts to get blurry or whatever. And so Jeff has that same question. It's like, do I make the show longer so I can get more sponsors and make more money off the show, but I may lose some viewers? Or should I cut it to the bone, make less money off the sponsors, but then maybe you can just jack up the rate?
Yeah, although that might be I didn't think of that. Maybe the reason they removed the world premiere is so that it's harder to tell the difference between the premiere trailers and the ads.
It's possible. Which would be really sad.
Like that people paying for the commercials are like, we don't like that the world premiere thing is there because it makes it obvious that we're a commercial.
That could be
a trailer.
Yep, it's true. So anyway, some subtle changes coming to the Game Awards for next Thursday night. But I don't think anything earth-shattering. He also did say that as far as the number of world premieres, it's going to be a little bit lower this year, which doesn't surprise me at all. Every year. Does he say that every year?
Yeah. The last 2 years,
undersell,
he's had like, hey, don't get too excited. We're going to have a couple big things, but it's not going to be, we're not going to be blowing the doors off everything.
Well, he said that for like Summer Games Fest.
He said that last year for this, too.
Did he?
Yeah.
I forgot that. So anyway, he is trying to undersell.
He has been managing expectations for some time now.
You kind of have to, because otherwise you just get murdered on the internet. Because there's just so many young kids that tune in that just don't understand how things work. Yeah. And they're just like, there's only 20 premieres, and I only care about... I think it started
from like the year before, where everybody was like thinking... Everybody expected like the Bloodborne remaster and shadow dropping Elden Ring,
right,
and the title of the new Zelda game, and it's just like, what do you think
they go
this
crazy?
Is?
Yeah,
exactly.
They're unrealistic in a lot of ways. So anyway,
we're talking about like it's a big deal if like the new Arc Nova trailer shows up or something.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of mainstream shit here that's going to reveal itself, except maybe, I don't know. I mean, Kojima probably. I mean, we'll probably get Death Stranding 2 in here somewhere, but if you want to call that
Yeah.
I mean, it's AAA. I don't know if it's mainstream.
With all the publishers doing their own Nintendo Direct style, whatever, it's like...
I mean, it's just you're just going to end up on the couch you've been run over by a truck full of indie games. And
Pretty much.
You can't tell which one's which anymore.
Yeah. Yep. So anyway, just a couple things that are coming up in next week's Game Awards. Our next story. We've been wondering what is going on with the Prince of Persia, The Sands of Time remake. It was announced and then it just disappeared. Trying to get information out of Ubisoft about it has been almost impossible. Well, that finally changed this week. Ubisoft said that the game has reached a very important milestone, which means not only is it coming, it also is pretty far into development and production at this point.
It should be. It's been how many years?
3, I think it has been since we got this trailer.
Maybe. I mean, I think it's been in development for longer than that. I thought.
Maybe. I think you're right. Actually, maybe 5 years. Maybe someone in chat will let us know. But it's been in development for a long time. My guess is it was probably stopped for a while, and then fans started getting pissed off about it, and they're like, "Oh, wait a minute! Maybe we should actually make this game." Or they just looked at their release calendar and is like, we don't have enough games every year anymore. And let's be honest, Ubisoft doesn't. I mean, it's to the point where it releases 2 or 3 games a year. I don't know how you support that many employees selling.
Yeah, it was announced in 2020. So 3 years ago.
So it's been 3 years at this point. Still, that's a long time.
But it was announced in 2020 for a 2021 release.
Which means that they had already been working on it. This game, by the way, is a great game. The original OG, The Sands of Time, great game.
Well, I mean, I don't think it really holds up much anymore.
Have you played it?
A couple of years ago.
Oh, really?
Around the time that it was supposed to come out and it didn't, so I went back. I mean, it's fine, but
it has all the time manipulation stuff, which still a lot of games don't do.
No, but it's also sort of that's all it is.
Yeah,
it's
that story's okay.
It was groundbreaking at the time, and it kind of opened up some doors as to how to do some things that a lot of other games have taken inspiration from. I don't think it really. I mean, I think what they're doing here are going to change it up a little bit, make it a little more modern, make it flow a little better. That's probably the right call. And of course, the sequels are terrible.
Yeah,
but I don't know.
We also have a new Prince of Persia coming here the next couple months in February. I think it launches the 2.5D Prince of Persia.
I thought it was the end of January.
I think it's February. It's soon. It's in the next couple months, the first couple months of the next year. So we'll have that. When do you think we're going to play this? My guess is not next year. They'll wait.
I don't know. 2
Prince of Persia games in the same year, probably not a smart idea.
No, but it's Ubisoft, so.
My guess would be maybe a year to the day after the new Prince of Persia launches. So February of...
I mean, it was always supposed to be a Q1 thing.
Yeah.
Even the announcement in 2020 was early 2021.
Yeah.
So they seem to want it in there somewhere.
Yeah. And that'll give you a year to sell the new one before you release this remake or whatever. But anyway, it is coming, and I think a lot of us, we just thought that we were never going to see it, and as it turns out this week, it is on the way. And pretty far into development. My guess is milestone, something like that. That means it might be feature complete, something like that.
Yeah, although that would mean that's a long time to polish something like this.
It is, yeah.
Maybe it needs it.
Yeah, it could be. But anyway, Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time remake is still on the way. Next up, we also got some information about the next Call of Duty. Everyone was kind of confused because we weren't supposed to get a Call of Duty this year. This year's game was supposed to be in 2024, and then 2024 is supposed to be Black Ops, and then... But if this game is next year, then Black Ops is going to be pushed to 2025. Nobody knew what was going on. And so this game comes out, and we've talked about it the last 3 episodes of GameFace. We don't need to talk about the actual game anymore. But this game comes out, and it is a brand new standalone game with its own campaign and blah, blah, blah. And then people are like, okay, well, that means Treyarch's game is coming next year instead of 2025. And what is that going to be? We found out this week that it is Black Ops 5, most likely, and that it takes place during the Gulf War in the early 90s. So it will have some kind of antiquated equipment in it, which is, not what Call of Duty has been doing for the last several entries. It's been this near future setting.
Although Black Ops is usually historical.
It always does go back. Yep. How do you feel about a game set during the Gulf War?
Oh, I don't care.
No?
No.
It's more likely to play the campaign or
not at all.
Yeah.
It's a little weird, I guess, in that you're making a campaign in living memory. which has not run out. I guess Vietnam technically was, but it probably. I guess the difference is that like Vietnam veterans probably weren't playing a lot of Black Ops,
right?
Whereas I'd imagine Gulf War veterans are.
Oh yeah, like right now. Yeah.
So I'm curious. I assume they. I'm not. Maybe assuming is wrong in this.
I mean, that's the big question. How are they going to react? I
just wonder how people will react to that, because it's like this. That's kind of a different thing.
Well, the Gulf War, I would also argue, in hindsight, has become like the latest Vietnam, a war that when it was going on, people were split on whether we should be there or not. But now that we've had a lot of time to learn about it and reflect on it, people are like, we had no business being there, just like Vietnam. Most people feel like we shouldn't have been involved in the Gulf War at all, and we went there under flimsy pretenses, just looking for revenge after 9/11, blah, blah, blah.
Well, the Gulf War was before 9/11.
Oh, before 9/11, actually, yeah.
We were just trying to secure the oil.
We were creating the problems that would lead to 9/11, basically,
well,
with
some of them.
in the Gulf War. So
a lot of those problems that led to 9/11 go back to the early 1900s.
Really? That far?
Oh, yeah. Like, part of that, like, look up why it happened on 9/11. That's an important date in Iran.
Interesting.
But, like, that goes back to, like, basically the Treaty of Versailles.
Right.
And, like, how Europeans carved that whole area up and all that, and they forced certain groups to live with certain groups
that they didn't want
not
to
have ever been living with.
Yeah.
I mean, that's also the story of Africa and a bunch of things. If you see a straight line on a map, a white guy drew it.
Yep. You're right. That's
but
true.
but this is like, how do you? I'm curious how they're gonna tackle the nuanced idea of like depicting boots on the ground, combat in a war that like probably shouldn't have been around. You also got like Gulf War syndrome,
right?
Like a lot of the U.S. soldiers that came home from this did not come home okay.
No,
even in ways that were different from normally not coming home okay from a war. And I wonder, do you address that? Or do you just go full jingo with it? I don't know. Like, it's
the setting also. If it does in fact take place in the Middle East, that's not exactly an exciting setting.
Like, not exactly exciting setting. And also, your opponent's not a great look. If like you're literally just gunning down Muslims at that point.
And with what's going on right now, I don't foresee what's going on right now to necessarily be settled by.
No,
a year from now.
It's a very.
It could be a tough.
It's a very flammable premise.
I hope they're thinking about it, because they may end up having to have no Call of Duty next year instead of this year.
Although like maybe they're sitting there thinking like, well, this will get us back this will get us on CNN.
All right,
and which means no such thing as bad publicity.
Yeah. To me, it's not an exciting setting at all. I'm not. I talked about on Ask Shane Anything. Like, one of the places I have really no interest in ever going as like a tourist is the Middle East. Mm-hmm. And it's the same deal with video games. Like, games set there. I mean, let's just be honest. It's a lot of sand. It's a lot of tan. Mm-hmm. I think it's a hard setting to make interesting.
Yeah, and
visually,
there are interesting places and ancient sites and things you can do stuff with, but like that wasn't real. They weren't really a huge part of the Gulf War. Obviously you can do whatever you want. It's fiction. Sure. Like, if you want to have everybody fight at an ancient temple or something, like I guess you could, or have it be like an alternate history version of things. Mm-hmm. It's not. Fallujah is not a fascinating battle. It's just a horrible incident.
It's horrible. Yeah.
Which I guess you can capitalize on in this game, but it all again.
Just saying that sentence.
You're in the living
dirty.
memory thing again. It's like for whatever reason it's a little different when you're doing like world wars, and it's like everybody who's involved in them is either dead or in their 80s.
Right.
And it's not like it's not like they don't approach that with respect, but also. People don't really demand as much nuance out of a World War II game.
Right.
Whereas, like...
people don't know it as well.
Yeah.
The conflict in general. I mean, it's time is just... The memories have faded. A lot of Gen Z don't know really anything about World War II. Mm-hmm. And the Gulf War, obviously, much more recent. And
I would argue Gen Z doesn't know anything about the Gulf War either. But
maybe not. Maybe a little bit more.
I mean, there's not a lot of, exciting history around the Gulf War. It's just sort of one of those things we did that we don't really talk about
dragged on
anymore.
And we're embarrassed by. Yeah.
Gulf War didn't last very long.
Really?
It was only. Desert Storm was like 30 days or something.
Yeah, that's true.
That was liberating.
We were in Afghanistan way longer.
That was liberating Kuwait.
Yeah.
The war in Afghanistan was a giant.
That one really dragged on.
That's another one we absolutely should not have been there for.
Yeah. Funny how that works.
But this was just securing our oil fields essentially, and turning Saddam into the real villain of
the monster
of the latter half of the 21st century.
Yep.
It's always good to have one of those.
Well, the good news, at least for me, is that Treyarch's Call of Duty games are my favorites. So I am excited that one of their Call of Duties is coming out next year, but now I'm really starting to wonder if that's going to happen or not.
I mean, it won't matter to the multiplayer.
Yeah.
It's, it's going to be what it is. The campaign though, like might have, it might finally get one of their no Russian moments again.
Except Treyarch isn't the one that did no Russian.
No, but the people who didn't know Russian are gone.
Right.
So that was Infinity Ward under the Respawn people.
Right. Yeah. So anyway, we'll see what happens. I mean, it could get messy, Matt. If this starts spreading, like, here's the thing, though. They didn't unveil this year's Call of Duty until, like, 3 weeks before the thing launched. I remember they waited this year. Usually they unveil it around E3 time. They waited until fall to unveil it this time. And they may do the same thing with this one because they're like, man, let's just, like, slide it in under the radar. We know our fans are going to buy it no matter what. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how it all plays out ultimately. And the timing is just bad because, they plan these way in advance. So, like, 7 years ago, Treyarch is like, okay, for Part 5, we want to do the Gulf War. And at that point, they're like, okay, that's fine. But now things change in the real world, and all of a sudden, maybe that's not a great plan, but you've already been working on that game for 4 years, and you need it to come out if you're Activision Blizzard, or now Microsoft. You need it to come out every year. It could get really messy. So we'll see how it goes, but as of right now, the next Call of Duty for next year is a new Black Ops game set during the Gulf War in the early 90s. Next up, PC players have been waiting a long time for something from Starfield, and that is DLSS, and that delivered this week. Matt, did you go back and play it at all?
I poked at it a little bit.
What did you think?
It's about the same.
Really?
I mean, my game didn't run badly. It was all pretty smooth. Now I can run it like at a higher resolution and downsample to 4K, and it does look sharper. Like, it definitely looks better.
Okay.
And
but your frame rates are better though, right?
Frame rates is still 60.
Oh, okay.
Still, I mean, my frame rate was always fine.
You can't get it up to like 120 with DLSS?
Probably, but I don't care.
Okay.
Really.
60's enough, man.
60's fine.
Yeah. 30's enough.
Yeah.
I have no problem playing 30 frames per second games as long as they're rock solid 30.
So yeah, it looks good.
Did it allow you to add any effects to it that you weren't able to use before? I mean, your PC is such a beast.
The HDR looks better.
Okay.
Just because of the downsampling to some degree, and I think the HDR didn't work quite right at launch anyway on PC. So yeah, like wandering around the main city and looking at some planets, like it definitely looked better. Not like a generational leap or anything, but it was just like, okay, yeah, that's more like it looked more like this, really. So that's good. I didn't keep playing it. I didn't. The only thing I really played for any length of time this week was a game called An Arcade Full of Cats.
That's funny.
Which is a hidden object game.
Oh.
Ostensibly by a development team that's all cats.
What do you mean?
The fiction around the development team is that they're cats.
Oh.
And like they're free to play games, most of them, and then if you buy the DLC for them, the money goes to like shelter cats.
Oh, that's great.
But they have a bunch of them. Like it's like, and the arcade one is fun. It goes through different like 80, 85, 90, 95 of different arcades they go through time, like Back to the Future style, with a Doc cat and a Marty cat. And you have to find cats in each arcade, and the arcades are, they're all drawn up with like cat versions of classic arcade games from the correct era and stuff.
Yeah.
So that's what I played this week, and I did boot up Starfield just to see it. And yeah, it looks better. It looks pretty much like it probably should have when it launched, honestly. Other than that, I didn't see a huge difference. Well, obviously, it's not a content update. It's a options update. I guess the field of view thing was put in too, but I didn't have a problem with the field of view to begin with. So
okay, but a noticeable improvement for people with weaker rigs. It probably should be a huge improvement.
Probably, like performance wise, no. Visually, it did make a difference.
Okay, even on your amazing machine that you own. So that's good. Users had hacked it into the game like almost right away. It's funny it took Bethesda so long to get it to work. But
yeah, well, I think this one lets you. It's good enough that I can run it at 8K and downsample to 4K, and that does make a visual jump.
Okay,
of appreciable amount. which I couldn't really get it to work that way with the user-made version.
Okay. And for those of you who don't know, by the way, DLS is like a magic trick, basically, where it...
Or FSM or whatever it is.
Yeah, how do you even say it in layman's terms?
It's basically using an algorithm to generate frames. That it's not legitimately producing through hardware.
Yeah, that aren't coming from the actual game. Yeah.
And that just happens to be, it's good enough that it fools your eye well enough that it feels like you're running at a higher frame rate than you can run at.
Yep.
And you're looking, Cyberpunk, if I turn everything on, everything up to maximum on Cyberpunk, I get like 55 frames a second on my computer, and then if I turn DLSS on, I get 120.
Yep, there you go. That's how it works.
It's a remarkable leap.
Yep. So finally, that's a part of Starfield on PC, although it feels like it may be a day late and a dollar short. Yeah. Though typically Bethesda's games are played for
noted,
years.
As Cinetite notes, I am using DLSS 3.
Okay.
Because it's the 4000 series card, whereas anything else below that is stuck with 2, which is still good, but it's not quite on the level of what 3 is doing.
Cinetite also reminds us that the Dark Pictures anthology House of Ashes is set during 2003's invasion of Iraq. And it was a cool backdrop for the game. Games don't always stay away.
Eternal Darkness had a Gulf War section.
That's right. I forgot about that. Yeah. And then Quickster asks, thoughts on Starfield developers responding to negative Steam reviews by basically saying you're wrong. Yeah, so that's the story that came out today, is that the developers of Starfield are going onto Steam and replying to negative reviews.
Which is absolutely crazy.
It's insane. It's like whack-a-mole.
Why would you do that?
Why? You can't do it. It's the same reason, like, back when I did Invisible Walls and we'd have, like, 150,000 people watch the show every week, I didn't even go into the comments because it was pointless. Like, when the first couple of times I tried, I was like, why am I answering this person's question, but I'm ignoring the other, 5,000 people who commented on the show? Ultimately, I was just like, I'm just not going to comment at all because I didn't feel right, like, picking and choosing who I was responding to. Like, this just...
And it also, as one of my friends online said, it ends with warm regards. And I've never been fully satisfied with any message that ends with warm regards.
Total passive-aggressive sign-off. Yep, absolutely.
It's like, what a waste of time.
Yeah.
Like, you know what? Instead of writing Steam review responses, maybe you could have gotten that DLSS patch out a couple weeks sooner.
Yeah. We also think, too, about all the layoffs that are happening in the games industry. Like, okay, if you are going to lay people off, those are the people you should probably lay off.
And if you're going to, look,
people who are going and
sometimes you get weirdo trolls
reviews.
in the reviews, and like these indie developers go in and kind of address them, and Steam does kind of deal with that. But Bethesda doesn't need to do that. There's no reason for Bethesda to be doing that. Like,
it's ridiculous.
They're too big.
Yeah.
They're owned by Microsoft, for God. Who cares?
Yeah. I don't know what they're thinking.
It's ridiculous.
It's not going to do anything. All it's doing is now we're talking about
you're throwing a thimble full of water. Yeah, you're throwing a thimbleful of water in a house fire.
Yeah, exactly. And they're going to talk about it on all the other podcasts because now Bethesda looks like an idiot. Like, this is on the internet 101.
It'd be one thing if it was like about this issue or this, maybe this person has a hardware issue.
Yeah, you're just not understanding.
But you're literally saying, like, hey, the boring is intentional, and you should be excited about the boring.
Yeah. I mean, that's what's happening.
And it's just like, I mean, I get what they're saying. Like, you need negative space to highlight the, you can't have light without the dark kind of thing. And they're right. Like,
you need valleys to appreciate the peaks.
It makes it more interesting when you get to a planet with a lot going on, which is true. However, like, people aren't really referring to that so much as I think the fact that if you've seen one mining facility, you've literally seen them all because there's only one configuration for them. Why aren't there like 6?
I don't know.
Why aren't there like 10?
Yeah.
How come I can't find a mining facility and not know which one I'm going to get? I mean, the fucking corpses are in the same place.
I know. It's really...
So, yeah, don't give me that warm regards shit. Give me some fucking corpses in a different stairwell. How about that?
Yep. So anyway, that's the latest on Starfield. Next up, last week's episode, well, we shared that they had announced The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered, and we wondered whether a game like that really needs to be remastered because the game already looks good enough, and we didn't have a lot of details on exactly what was going to be in the package, but we do now. In fact, we have pretty much all the details. Naughty Dog posted a blog post this week that went over pretty much everything that will be in The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered. It will include a trio of lost levels, which feature playable sequences previously cut from the game. The lost levels let you explore early development versions of 3 new levels not seen in the original, including Sewers, Jackson Party, and Boar Hunt. There's also, they've recorded hours of brand new developer commentary that you'll be able to play or be able to listen to as you play the game if you want to. And they also released more information on the roguelike survival mode that's called No Return. Basically how it works is you survive as long as you can in each run, and then as you choose your path through a series of randomized encounters, you end up coming up against different foes in memorable locations through the campaign. And then ultimately each run ends in a boss battle where they pull one of the bosses from the main campaign, which is pretty sweet. There are also unique gameplay modifiers that offer new and unexpected challenges as you fight through the different waves. There's a host of different encounter types that you can select. You can play as a variety of different characters, including never before playable characters like Dina, Jesse, Lev, Tommy, and others. Each character in the game has their own unique traits to offer, and allows you to play the game in different ways depending on the play style that you kind of prefer. You can also unlock skins for each character as you progress through the mode. And then a final technical note is that the game will feature enhanced graphics, obviously, including native 4K output in fidelity mode and 1440p upscaled to 4K in performance mode. Are you surprised that, I don't know. It seems like this game is a PS4 game running on PS5. I feel like those graphics options should maybe be a little better.
I don't know how much better you're going to get on that hardware. They were pushing things pretty hard. I mean, something that runs, at that level, at that frame rate on both, assuming do they have a frame rate for fidelity?
I didn't say.
So I'm guessing that's
assumption.
I'm guessing it's going to be 60.
Right. Yeah.
Which is definitely an improvement from what, the
PS4
quality
version
was on the PS4 version. So that's good enough for him. Plus all that extra stuff is, that's pretty good for $10.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for $10, if you're someone who already owns it, you're getting all this for $10. Now everybody else have to pay $70, but if you haven't played The Last of Us Part 2, I mean, that's a pretty damn good package for $70.
No Return is a cool idea, just in the sense that one of the combat in this game is actually good.
It is good.
It was one of the biggest
huge improvement over the
one.
first. Yep.
And so having a mode like that lets you really play around with it is a good idea.
Have you ever watched YouTube videos of people playing Last of Us Part 2 where this high level play?
Oh yeah.
It's pretty crazy what you can do in this game.
There's some crazy stuff you can do. And sometimes I'm like, I've never seen that happen when I did that.
Right.
It's like that guy flew backwards in a way that I've never seen someone fly backwards like that. It's like it feels like some of it's just like
modding or whatever.
Not modding, but it's just like they must have done that a lot to get that to work out exactly the same.
I'm sure they do. I'm sure they practice their run 100 times.
Like that one guy who does all the really good GIFs. He came from NeoGAF, I think. Originally.
Oh, really?
I can't remember his name now. Sunny Legend. That's he's on Twitter and Reddit and posts them. And he always does various. He did Horizon ones. He does any game that has combat. He does some cool ass. He takes all the HUD off and just does some awesome thing where he just manhandles the hardest boss in the game or whatever.
Yeah.
Cinematically with moving the camera angle around. And he did some really good ones for Last of Us 2.
I never saw any of those. This game is ripe for stuff like that, though. Even with my non-expert play, there was tons of moments playing this game where I was like, whoa, I can't believe I just did that. That's really flipping awesome.
I also for whatever reason, I keep thinking when I see all the footage of this game and the new stuff, I'm just like, all these people should be deaf. They fire guns next to each other's heads all the time.
But to me, this is looking like a pretty awesome package. And if you have not already played this game, as Mike's Q mentioned last week, if this doesn't get you off the sideline, I don't know what will. Because you're getting way more game than we got when we bought this originally for PlayStation 4. And as you know, if you trust us at all, both Matt and I believe this is one of the best games maybe ever. So certainly one to keep an eye on. It comes out, January 19th, if I remember correctly from last week? I think that's what it was. So coming out pretty soon. And I'm excited I'm kind of excited to play it again. We talked about last week. It's there's a little bit of an element of dread associated with playing that game if you've experienced it already, because it is not an easy game to play due to the subject matter and the things that actually happen inside the game. So there you go. That's the latest on The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered. And then our final story for housekeeping today, unfortunately, another sad story for games journalism. I don't know if it even exists anymore, Matt. Is it even an industry anymore?
What?
Games journalism.
Was it ever an industry?
I mean, it was, for sure.
I mean, it was a remora on the back of an industry.
Yeah.
But
But even that, I don't think that remora even exists anymore.
No, it's more of a shrimp.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it. We got some bad news yesterday. The company ReedPop, which runs a lot of the conventions that we all go to, they handle PAX. They were supposed to revive E3, and a bunch of crap happened, and they weren't able to do it, and they ended up bailing, and the ESA and them are not partners anymore on that. However, if you remember, I think it was in 2020, they bought a huge collection of gaming websites. And Matt, it makes sense. If you are running conventions and you also own a bunch of gaming publications, that's a good match because you can give your publications access to stuff that other publications couldn't get. Now, editorially, to me, that is wrong. If I were them, I probably would never do that. However, it is a good match. Like, at the very least, you can give them a little bit of preferential treatment to make sure that they're off on the right foot. So, to me, they were a good match. Well, ReedPop has announced that all those sites that it bought back in 2020, it is now attempting to sell. So here are the sites that are basically on the chopping block at ReedPop right now. GamesIndustry.biz, Eurogamer, which also includes Digital Foundry, by the way, Rock Paper Shotgun, and VG247. We curate from all of those on SIFTD. And I would just say, the other day, I was going through our admin. I was looking at our sources, the actual publications that we pull and stuff from. And over time, like, publications fold, they go away, and we stop curating from them. It is insane to see. Because the thing is even if they stop publishing, we can't remove them from the site because if people go to those links later on, they'll all be broken. So we leave them up. And so I started looking through it, and it was like half of the publications that we initially had in our admin to curate content from are gone. And so now we're left with like 12 or something like that. And now here's like 4 or 5 that are in danger.
Who are they selling them to?
I don't think they are. They're not going to find any sellers for this unless they just give it away. And so what do you think's going to happen? They're going to fold and they're going to go away is what I think is probably going to happen. So again, GamesIndustry.biz, which is really the only mostly purely financial site for the games industry. I mean, games industry biz mostly is just all finance stuff for the most part. You have Eurogamer, which again is a great editorial site for Europe, but also is Digital Foundry, which handles like the tech side of gaming.
Yeah, Digital Foundry is a little more independent though. They have some other funding.
Do they?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
They're not. It's not a wholly owned thing. It's more of a sponsorship thing, as I understand.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that.
They might not be super
part of that.
Super dead.
Okay.
On that, if that falls apart.
Well, chances are they would just start their own YouTube channel. They probably should do that anyway.
I mean, they already did that. That's kind of where it came from.
Right.
So
they should go back probably to.
They can probably fall back to that.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they won't be taking as many trips to see new hardware or whatever.
People still like their content.
Yeah.
And then
they're a unique one.
Yeah.
Like they don't really have anyone. There's no one else that would really fill that.
Nope.
That gap.
That's a void that would be a void. Yep. And then Rock Paper Shotgun RPS. That's like a PC only. Bless you. It's a PC only site predominantly. Their content is, even though they still exist, their output has gone down drastically over the last few years. A lot of these websites have, honestly. So I don't know what's going to happen to RPS. I saw that they were like trying to hire like a lead editor, and they're trying to pay him like $38,000. Like,
no,
that's where you're at.
You're going to need to triple that.
Yeah,
for a full-time editor.
Yeah, but they won't. I mean, that's the going rate now
if you
for
mean
like
a video editor. Yeah.
No, I'm talking about like the editor in chief.
Oh, editor in chief.
Yes.
You're still going to need to triple that.
Yeah, but I'm saying that's what they're willing to pay for these jobs now. And
that's not a job then.
No, it's basically slave trade.
Yeah.
At that point. So they're not doing well, obviously, if that's what they can afford to pay like their lead editors. And then VG247, I don't know. They've never really done anything that has stood out.
I can't. I mean, I know the name. I just can't. I don't associate it with anything. Really.
Yeah. No, they've never really made something.
The others I can definitely name. I definitely associate
people
with specific stuff. Yeah.
Or content types that they made. But yeah, VG247, they're just kind of like just another gaming news site. So I don't know, Matt. How long do you think it'll be until there will be no sites left?
I mean, I don't think IGN goes away until you close the universe and lock the doors behind you on the way out, kind of thing.
Yeah.
IGN will exist as long as there's a game industry.
Yeah, I believe that too.
Everything else, We'll see. I mean, GameSpot is going to take a fair amount to knock down, but like it's right there on the edge.
You can look at their traffic and see it's not good.
Well, I mean, it depends. As long as advertisers are in there, it doesn't matter. They can run on a skeleton crew, which like they've pretty much been doing.
But you have to have inventory to have advertisers. You have to have video views to run your ads on. You have to have people showing up to your website with their eyeballs to look at the ads. Like,
right, but if you're a part of a conglomerate like that, a lot of times it's part of a group buy. Yeah. So they may slip by for a little longer than you might expect.
Well, they are owned by a big conglomerate now, and that might make a difference for them.
Yeah.
But there you can see.
But there's going to come a time when they do their pruning round and realize that they've got this like little thing over here that nobody's looked at in 2 years, and then they're going to cut that and make it look like they're being responsible,
right? And they'll try to
streamlining the company. Yep. So there you go.
They'll lower its overhead, and they'll try to sell it.
Or just shut it down.
Right.
There's a point at which you're like, well, who are you going to sell that to?
It is crazy to think though that you have.
That's the problem. Is like when you
who buys
who buys any of this stuff? Who wants this?
I mean, for most of these, they're just a black hole of losing revenue. Like, I don't know what it would take to turn things around because the kids just don't care. Like, Gen Z does not care about websites at all.
Well, it was interesting to see, there was a controversy on Twitter this week with an indie developer who did like a whole long thing about it. It was a game, it was like a little indie game. Why can't I remember what it was? It's like growing spices or plants it's some weird little season, something like that. But he was going along about it because it sold like 1 million copies on Steam. And so it's a success. But one of the things he said in his kind of Twitter thread that people lost their spirity. That's right. Thank you, Vincent. It was like at one point he was basically like, I didn't really get any YouTube coverage because I refused to pay
the influencers
for it. And I think that's gross. I think it's icky. And like some people did. There were a few videos, like he had a screenshot of some, like Cozy Gamers Club and a couple things that did it just because they were interested in it. And there was this huge fury in response to that of like, how dare you not think that these people should get paid for their work and all this shit. And it was weird because like even like places that normally like are pretty even keeled about what the influencer versus payment thing is, like Reset Era and stuff, kind of lost their minds and were like, this guy's an asshole. And he was forced to apologize. And like, it was crazy. And I'm like, no,
wow.
It's not. I mean, yeah. If he doesn't want to pay for advertising that way, then that's basically he says it feels too much like paying for an opinion, paying for a review.
Yeah.
And what those influencers do is not reviews. They do basically
fluff
content. They do fluff. They do PR, right?
Yeah.
But like, and it's weird to not see the Gamergate people come out here with all of a sudden that's cool.
The ethics in games journalism.
But it's like that. But it's that thing that was happening back then. Where it's like we believe that all the people who work at real review outlets are paid shills, but we trust the opinions of the YouTube people. When the YouTube people are the ones that are actually getting paid by the publishers to like the game.
Yeah.
And it was like this all over again, and all the YouTube supporters and all the YouTube people freaked out that this guy was saying that he didn't want to pay these guys, and it felt gross. And everyone kind of agreed with him.
Yeah, they're like, "How dare you not want to pay people to lie to me?"
And
please.
Then it kind of like derailed and turned into this thing. It's like, well, he said that he got no YouTube coverage, but he even had a screenshot of these smaller. And how do they think those smaller YouTube channels felt to be called no coverage? And I'm like, I'm pretty sure they knew what he meant on that one. That he meant like the big boys weren't paying attention.
Yeah.
And clearly he saw that he should put a screenshot up of them. He saw it. He saw that. But he meant no YouTube coverage in the sense that they were not on the front page. It was you would never see that randomly pop up in the algorithm. You saw that if you were a subscriber to those channels already.
Right.
Which is not nothing.
Yeah.
And he basically says, now I wonder...
Well, if you're the little guys...
And he said, now I wonder, even though we sold 1 million, now I wonder how much more we would have sold if I had paid for that. And I'm like, that's a valid question.
Yeah.
But he's not comfortable with it. And, like, he got fucking hammered and basically backed all the way down. Like, and it was so weird. Like,
Matt, people have no idea
no value attributed to the reviewers versus YouTube people who get paid to act like they like a thing.
Here's the thing, Matt. They have no idea how shit works.
Also, isn't YouTube the one that's supposed to fucking pay you for that? Not the game company.
The truth is, they just don't know how stuff works. And they don't think about it either. They're like, I like this person. And that's really all that matters. They don't care how much experience they have, whether they care about their own editorial integrity. They don't care. They like the personality. And that's all that matters. And they're like, I like this guy. If this guy likes this game, even if he's lying to me about it, I also like this game because I'm his whatever their little name is for the fans. Like we have sifters or whatever. Every person has like the name, like I'm them and I'm going to believe this guy and I'm going to buy stuff based upon it's crazy. But that's what's happening with journalism because you have like fake news. So there's this like, fake news didn't quote the phrase didn't even exist until like 2016. Like, but now everybody knows
not widespread. Fake news was used pretty widely in 1930s Germany.
Oh,
that's where it comes from. Yeah. That is not a coincidence.
Yeah,
think about it.
But it's funny. Like even the people who don't subscribe to the fake news BS, still in the back of their mind, they're like fake news. It's a thing, and so. They're just generally the trust in real journalists has waned since 2016 because you have large groups of people actively trying to undermine the truth.
Right. And there's also the constant misuse of the word shill, which drives me nuts for reasons that are mostly probably related to my English degree.
Yeah.
But it's just like, that happens mostly in things like the Star Wars fandom, where they're like, oh, the Disney shills are here to defend. I'm like, You understand that a Disney show would be someone paid by Disney to try to get you to engage with the content, and we mostly just want you to go away.
That's funny.
Kind of the opposite of a shill when you think about it.
Yeah.
But that was a weird moment in the past week that I assume didn't get a lot of coverage because nobody wants to touch it.
Yeah.
But it's like, it was just ridiculous. It was.
I mean, here's what's going to happen. There's a reason.
At some point, there's no more game reviews except from these influencer
shills
channels. Yeah.
They are shills.
Yeah,
they are paid.
And I'm not saying you can't do paid content and not still have an not objective, but a legitimate opinion later. Like I'm not saying
later in that piece of content you probably can't.
No, but like we did that. We did previews of things that were paid, and then like when it's time for the review to come around. We didn't pull punches on it because of that.
Yeah.
Like, that was part of the deal.
You can't do it right. Yeah.
I just don't really think a lot of people in the YouTube space are doing that because you're not dealing with people who are trained in that kind of business.
Well, here's the problem,
These people don't have journalism degrees. These people don't know what it means to do that.
Most of them barely graduated high school. Let's be honest, man. Like... Here's the thing, though.
They don't have editorial teams. They don't have someone keeping them in check.
No, they don't even know what editorial is. They've never even heard the word. Mm-hmm. They didn't enter into their minds that taking money from Nintendo to say a Nintendo game is awesome is something that they shouldn't do. That's not even in their minds, Matt. Mm-hmm. Here's the thing.
Meanwhile, I'm just like, I don't care how much money you gave the company I work for.
Right.
Like, that doesn't mean I had a better time playing the fucking G.I. Joe game.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't make up for the 40 hours I had to spend reviewing your bad game. I'm absolutely going to give you a bad review for that.
Here's the problem, Matt. Independent outlets no longer can afford to do the job. Mm-hmm. And by doing the job, that means paying for flights and hotels to go and check out games. Sometimes the event is in Europe and it's a $10,000 to fly you and one other person to Germany and back to go cover a game. Publications can't afford to do that anymore. We never travel. Ever. We don't need to. You do not need to travel to really cover this industry anymore. You used to have to.
Certainly not from a criticism angle.
Yeah, you don't have to do that anymore. But that's the problem is like you lose the coverage and you lose the eyeballs if you're not going to these events for these big publications. You need that content to keep the eyeballs going and you just can't afford to do it anymore. The only people that can afford to do it are the influencers that the publishers are paying to go to the events. They're covering their airfare. They're covering their hotels. They're covering their meals the whole time they're there. Like, you can't do that as a publication anymore, and you can't afford to not do it either. And that's why the publications are going away. It's too expensive to do the job correctly. Mm-hmm. That's the problem. And there's just not enough revenue coming in anymore because people don't appreciate real editorial. They don't care. Like... So anyway...
So again, like Silk Snake says, I will stand by getting something for free changes your opinion. Lego has thousands of shills who get free shits and they rave about how great Lego are. Again, that's them. You can give me whatever you want to give me for free and it is not going to change my opinion of that object.
I will challenge you. I will challenge you to pick out any reviews that I have done on this show in 2023 and tell me whether that review I paid for that game or I was given that game. You will never be able to tell. Ever.
No. And I do agree that is a factor in Lego. And I watched some of it. But
well, I mean, how do you review Lego?
Right.
Like, it's,
I mean,
you like
it
the
either
idea,
goes together or it doesn't.
The freaking bricks snap together no matter what. Like,
bricks snap together, and it's more about the outcome of how the final model looks like. Does it look good? But it's like
that's like
Lego's
the dumbest thing to review.
Well, also Lego's one of the best companies in the world in that regard. And and also like the Lego world does have like a weird thing where it's like if you're not being positive, then we don't want to deal with you, sort of thing. And like negative reviews are seen as that, and that is also by the way a problem in the board game world. Like this relentless positivity thing. And if you give something a negative review, sometimes people will be like, other people might like it, so you're wrong to say bad things about that game. I'm like, oh my god, this is so not the world I came up in the video. I come from Star Wars and video games. People, all we do is scream about how terrible everything is.
I mean,
what a different world, you know?
It is a different world. It absolutely is an entirely different world. It's a world bereft of editorial integrity. It's a world that I honestly don't want to be a part of.
Which was not how video games were.
What do you mean?
I mean, like there was a time when video game coverage was more what you're talking about.
Yeah, it all was pretty much. The people who weren't that way stood out and were like ridiculed.
Right.
Now, if you run straight editorial, you're the one that stands out like a sore thumb, and people don't want to like watch your content.
Right. Well,
you
because
may make fun of something I really like.
Because the model's gone.
Yeah, I can't believe people review Lego sets. That is insane.
People review everything.
I guess if you can get YouTube ad revenue, you're gonna review it. I guess. I just don't understand why people would watch.
I mean, people watch to feel more informed about it. I haven't paid much attention to them because I don't really get Lego anymore unless it's one of the big Star Wars sets. But like it's those things are expensive.
But are they going to say like it was missing a piece? Like,
well, no, they're going to talk about whether the build is too complicated or more complicated because if you're buying it for a kid,
I can see that angle. I can see that.
You're talking about all the features it has once it's built. Like how does it look? Does it hold together? Is it a display piece? Is it a play piece? Is it that kind of thing? Because these things are fucking pricey.
They are expensive.
Even like the low-end Lego sets are like $40-50 now.
Yeah.
I remember when
I have to buy gifts for nieces and nephews.
When I first started buying Star Wars Legos in the mid-2000s, you could walk into a store and buy a TIE Interceptor like this big. I still have one in the hallway for $19.99.
Yeah. And now it's $49.99.
You know what $19.99 gets you now in Lego? Nothing. Like maybe a minifigure pouch for like $9.99 or something.
I shop for nieces and nephews every holidays, and most of them I spend $25 to $30 on because I have a lot of them. And you can get like these little Lego sets put together,
which used to be $5.99.
Right?
You know, like and it's like I know there's inflation and all, but and look, the price per piece on Lego is about the same as it was in the '80s. Like it's maintained pretty common, pretty steady. The whole thing. The one thing is, most sets have more pieces now,
right?
Because people demand a certain level of fidelity out of that final build.
Yeah.
But also, like, things are just bigger now. Like the popular sets are the giant ones. Everyone wants that fucking Rivendell thing. I have nowhere to put it, or I would have gotten it. You know? But like, it's just a thing. And also, there's like a huge bootlegs. There's a lot of Lego reviewers that also review bootleg Legos, and they're a little more even keeled about those.
Yeah.
Because they don't get those for free.
Yeah. Well, all I can say is if you are someone who does care about editorial integrity and does care about people doing things the right way and not taking money from publishers, we have never taken a penny from a publisher or a developer ever. Never a penny. And that's all because of you guys. Because you guys support us. And you allow us to have editorial autonomy. That's a big reason why I did this. Because, like, man, I don't have to deal with the crap I had to deal with the publishers in the past. Keep in mind, I left game trailers like a month after that crap happened with Rockstar and Max Payne, where they pulled advertising from us for giving an honest opinion about their game. Notice Shane left not too long after that. Anyway, if you care about honest opinions about games and stuff that isn't influenced by outside anything, you found your home. GameFace, SIFTD. So anyway, it is very discouraging to see this. Again, I mentioned it like a few months ago. Why is it our industry that is doing this? Like, if I had taken a job in news or in sports, this isn't happening. Now, granted,
I mean, there has been a great shrinkage in news reporting.
There is. There's on the local level.
Yeah.
Particularly.
Which is where a lot of real reporting
bad crap
comes
happens.
from.
You're right. Absolutely.
You know,
I totally hear that. But, like, I mean, you're seeing a little bit of a shift. Like, ESPN just signed on, what's that dude's name? I can't remember. They just signed him to, like, $200 million contract, and his show is like this. It's literally like dudes just hanging out talking about stuff in not really a professional setting, and they just gave the guy like $200 million for his show. So things are shifting a little bit as far as like the content types are concerned, but ESPN still runs like a major publication. It has a gigantic website, it has lots of reporters, it has lots of on-air people. For some reason, this is only happening in games. And my guess is because most of the clientele for games, a lot of it is younger people who have no clue what the F they're doing or what matters or who they should trust or who they shouldn't trust. So it's a shame. There's dozens and dozens of people who are probably going to lose their jobs when ReedPop can't figure out who to sell all this stuff to. And it freaking sucks. So anyway.
Jobs that have no other place to go. You know?
Yeah, there's no place to go. Mm-hmm. It's like, who's going to hire them?
It's like the Embracer thing. Like those jobs that they're eliminating, like there is not other places to go from there. Like
because
those are just thousands of jobs that are going to go away, period.
Yeah. It's crazy. All right, before we move on with the bulk of the show, let's check in with you guys one more time because we've been talking about this for a while. Caleb Fruki says younger people have no money. I'm not sure what that means. Pat McAfee, Mellow Pintor, that's who I was talking about. He says he is a huge ass licker, though. But Pat McAfee is kind of like the influencer. Like, he will say stuff negative, but for the most part, after he does that, he tries to put a positive spin on it afterwards. And be like, well, you know, that's one problem, but we could fix it by doing this or whatever. Like, generally, they try to keep everything positive. Caleb Faruqi says it's the Cray Mass effect. Clay UK says Cray Mass will make us forget the horrors of the industry. Cinetype says it's sad about good journalism going away, but to be honest, there's less people consuming it and paying for it.
That's true. It is like people expect like news to just be free online as opposed to people who were willing to subscribe to a paper back in the day.
Yeah. Commander Fest says they increased the price of Lego sets around $10 last year. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Erebus Jones says
Lego's ridiculously expensive.
To be fair, as somebody who spent a lot on Lego, there's a lot that you can comment on. If you drop the price of a PS5 on a Lego set, you want to know if it's a boring build. Okay. I mean, a boring build. You're just snapping bricks together. How is that more exciting or less exciting?
Because there's different ways that they build certain things, and there's sometimes you put something together and you're like, oh, that was a really interesting way they made that happen, or kind of make the structure sort of come together. Whereas, like, one of the reasons I have not built that Ultimate Collector Series AT-AT is I know I'm going to have to build 4 legs.
Yeah.
And they're all going to be the same leg, just 4 times, and that's boring. Like, so that set was $700. So if you're really thinking about it, that's going to be a thing where you're like, hey, maybe spend that amount of money on the Millennium Falcon or the Star Destroyer, which do not have 4 repetitive sections and would be more fun. If you're only going to get one, maybe you want, unless you're in love with the AT-AT, which I am. Yeah. Maybe you want one that's going to be less of a chore to build like that. Believe me, like those things take. Some people, it can take 10 hours to put one of those together. It's the length of an actual video game, except it costs 10 times as much.
Right.
It's ridiculous.
Well, Super Master Gamer says the problem is big gaming companies don't need old school media anymore. Yeah, they don't need them because they can pay off the influencers.
Yeah, the influencers, you can also get reach people directly.
Yeah.
I mean, remember that the model originally came from the game magazines, and like that was the way you found out a game existed, was seeing the advertisements in those magazines. Unless it was like a big thing like a Nintendo or Sega thing, you had no chance. I mean, that's the only reason I know half of those games from back in the day exist, was I remember the ads running in those magazines.
Yeah.
And that just, for a while that kind of existed in the online space in the 90s and early 2000s, but eventually, we didn't have a lot of video game advertising on our shows, in part because the shows didn't want video game advertising. They wanted credit cards and cars, because that's where the money is in television advertising.
Yeah, you're right. One Super Master Gamer, thank you for Twitch Prime, by the way. Pharaoh Doll says, if you can't see the negatives in something you don't like that thing, you just like the idea of that thing. Yeah, you're right. Mm-hmm. A couple other comments up here. Oh, Caleb Faruqi says, confidence in journalism arguably started to decline because of SEO clickbaiting. Yeah, and like listicles and things like that. I mean, we made a lot of money at Spike doing lists that would get picked up on Dig or on Fark.com.
Yeah,
that was our secret weapon. That's how
Fark.com. There's a name I've not heard.
It's still there.
It's still there. I know.
Yeah, but if we would get something like, we would do top 10, like we'd put up like 3 or 4 top 10s a day. That's.
I mean, I remember when I was at Tech TV, I think FARC was a lot of people's homepage. Like it was like where everybody got their shit.
And even back then, like Dig was still big. And if we had one guy on Dig who would come to our site and look at our lists every day, and he'd pick 2 of our lists and he'd put them up on Dig, and they would just take off. And our list would do like 500,000 views in like 2 days. Like, you're right. The content online.
And that was one of the questions they'd ask in the G4 meetings, like, how is Game Trailers gaming Dig so well? And I'm just like, I think it's just...
That wasn't Game Trailers. This was Spike content that we did, yeah.
I mean, they said Game Trailers to mean all of that.
It was just Spike.
When they said Game Trailers in a meeting, the executives at G4 just meant Viacom.
Oh, yeah.
Basically.
Yeah, that was just Spike.com. Our list...
There was a lot of nuance in that room.
Yeah.
Not to shock you, but...
So anyway... It's a shame. I feel like we talk about this like once a year because the writing is on the wall again, where we just see more of these publications we've been reading for decades in some cases disappear. And it's hard to watch. It's hard to take, I'll be honest with you. As somebody who went to school to do this and went to college to do this, watching your industry just completely dissolve in front of your own eyes, it's hard to take. Corey Film, thank you for Twitch Prime as well. Sliding in there.
Rev 3 Games.
Yeah.
Brief
with Adam. They did pretty good stuff though. Adam cares about editorial integrity.
Yeah,
he cares.
I did some stuff with them.
That's the people you need to support. Are the people who care about it.
I did their Dark Souls 2 review.
Oh really?
He was like, I can't do this.
I don't
do it. And I'm like, oh yeah. And I wasn't sure either because Dark Souls 2, as you recall, is the one that finally clicked for me. And it was like 20 some hours into the game, and I was sitting there at this one part I'd been at for like a whole day, and I was like, I can't do this. I can't get through this thing. I can't make it through this game. And finally something happened.
Snapped.
And it all worked after that. And I was like, oh yeah.
Only because Adam forced you to play.
Pretty much, yeah. Adam's the reason I'm a Dark Souls person now because of that. Because I don't think I would have gotten that far. I would have given up before then if I didn't have to do it for a job.
Yeah.
I still only gave it a 4 out of 5, but like because the fucking hitboxes were terrible. Like not the hitboxes, it was the bosses that rotated on nothing.
Yeah,
you remember that? Remember it launched?
Yeah,
and like it would like you'd be like trying to dodge, and they would just like turn on this fulcrum instantly.
It's
and
just
hit
like
you.
sprites in old 2D games.
They fix it in a patch because it wasn't supposed to be like that. But I'm just like, I'm gonna kill somebody on it.
Well, it's like those PlayStation 1 games where you'd stop and you'd look at a tree. And you'd move around the tree, and the tree would move with you and follow you around.
It was like that, except the tree's trying to hit you with a club.
Right.
Yeah. That first boss still kind of has some trouble with that.
Oh, really?
To this day.
Wow.
But back then, I mean, the first time I played the review copy, it was like you couldn't dodge him. Like I had to go back and basically level up some stuff so I could hit him from a distance to the point that I knew I'd be able to get in close and hit him enough times to kill him before he could kill me. Like it was literally a battle of attrition.
Wow.
And that's what a great first impression that was.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Also, I should add that I feel bad for the people who are working at these publications because they know. As soon as they saw this yesterday, they knew. They're like, my job is in jeopardy. And that immediately will just impart upon you horrible anxiety. And so now all the people working at these publications are dealing with this.
Just in time for Christmas.
Yeah. Just in time for Christmas. Yep, exactly. Anyway, that's it for housekeeping for today's episode before we get on with the bulk of the show, although I don't know if it's the bulk of the show at this point.
Yeah, I don't know about that. It's almost 3.
Yeah. Here's a word from our sponsor, LS Cream. LS Cream is a fine cream liqueur created by fellow gamer and sifter Stevens Charles. It's inspired by an ancestral recipe from Haiti called Cray Mass, and a double gold winner for its original taste at the New York Wine and Spirit International Competition. LS Cream can be enjoyed on the rocks or as a mixer for drinks with its rich blend of fresh cream and neutral grain spirits with notes of coconut, vanilla, cinnamon, and nutmeg. It's great in coffee or to make espresso martinis. To learn more, discover amazing drink recipes, or to track down your own bottle using a handy store locator, head to creamls.com/sifted. That's creamls.com/sifted. All right, so here's what you're going to do. Every year, if you enjoy drinking, you probably buy eggnog to make holiday-themed drinks. What you're going to do this year is instead of buying the eggnog, you're going to go to lscream.com/sifted and you're going to replace the eggnog for this holiday season with LS Cream. I promise you, you will not regret it. It tastes way better than eggnog. Have you ever drank eggnog, Matt?
Oh, yeah.
Do you like it?
Yeah, I like it. Okay.
Oh, you do? It always
it certainly
tastes gross to me.
There's certainly such thing as bad eggnog.
No, there is for sure. Although I would argue you could probably put a little bit of LS Cream in the eggnog and make the eggnog better too. Yeah. So again, head to creamls.com/sifted. That's SIFTD. That'll show you where you can get bottles locally. There's a store locator. You can also find out where to buy it online. If you made it through Thanksgiving and you bought a bottle for Thanksgiving, you know what I'm talking about. Go get another bottle for Christmas. Christmas holidays a lot longer as well. You may want to buy more than one bottle. But anyway, thanks to LS Cream for supporting us. They're awesome. It is owned and run by a gamer and sifter. Support your fellow gamers. Support your fellow sifters. Support LS Cream. And with that, it's time to kick off the show proper. It was a really slow week for game releases, so we don't have a ton of games to talk about, though we do have a couple. But it is also the 3rd anniversary of the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X. We are now 3 years into next gen. Matt, when should we stop calling it next gen?
About a year ago.
Yeah. It is always weird, like that. It's like, how long do you call the new consoles next gen before you start thinking about the PlayStation 6 as the next gen? Mm-hmm. I agree. I think in a year's time you should probably do it, but the industry has not done that, Matt. Like, they're still using the nomenclature next gen to refer to PS5 and Xbox Series. It's a weird quirk with our industry for whatever reason.
Well, I mean, it's this generation more than most because things are still hybrid.
Yeah.
I imagine you'll see a little bit of next-gen stuff referring to the PS5 until the PS6 is announced.
Probably, yep. So anyway, we just hit the 3rd anniversary, and in generations past, we would be past the halfway point for these consoles, because back in the day, most consoles lasted 5 years, and then a new one came out, rinse and repeat. That doesn't happen that way anymore. Now they last for 7, 8, 9 years, and then they live alongside, like, the new console lives alongside the old console for a couple years. Like, things have completely changed. But I think at the 3-year mark, regardless of what era you're talking about, it's a good reflection point to look back and see what they've done right and what they've done wrong. And that's exactly what we're going to do today with the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X. So I've been collecting data and information around both platforms, and I put together some images that are going to support our discussion. Ultimately, at the end, we're going to give a letter grade for both the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X for its first 3 years of operation that, again, would have been the bulk of the lifespan for most consoles in the past. First, I'm going to pull up a slide that are just notable things that I feel like are important to people who are kind of monitoring these two machines. So with the PlayStation 5 right now, it's sitting at 41.7 million units sold. And now that figure is now a couple months old. That's the last one the PlayStation gave us. The console in general, or at least more recently, has had a games as a service focus. And its exclusives have become rare. But also the future roadmap for exclusives is kind of a mystery. We really don't know a lot of games. We know Wolverine, which we just talked about, and a couple others. But for the most part, we only know about the games as a service games. Now we can assume a new God of War is coming, a new Horizon game is coming, blah, blah, blah. But we haven't heard about those yet. So again, most of the games in the future are mostly a mystery. Then you look at what they've done hardware-wise. And I think this slide shows the difference in philosophies of what they've tried to do for the first 3 years. So on the PlayStation 5 side, look at the hardware that they have released around PlayStation 5. Other hardware that works tangentially with PlayStation 5.
All this year.
Yeah. You have PlayStation 5 Slim, you have PlayStation VR 2, and now you have PlayStation Portal. So you can see that it appears that PlayStation's strategy out of the gate was to get a bunch of supporting hardware out around the PlayStation 5. Do you think that's a smart strategy, Matt?
No, but I don't know if it's a strategy. I think they're just getting stuff out that they are indeed, and it's got to come out.
I mean, that's got to be a strategy. You have to dedicate so much money to this R&D on this hardware. Like, this is something that was planned years ago.
Yeah, but
it doesn't just materialize.
Right, but the landscape changed, and but apparently it makes more sense to still release it, I guess.
Yeah.
Because clearly they're not supporting the VR. I mean, people can go on and it's like, oh, there's so many releases that come out. And then you look at the releases and it's just like, oh, that's a bunch of mobile games that they converted to VR on the console.
Or they're old VR games.
Yeah, old VR games that are being ported forward, which, like, if it was Half-Life Alyx, I wouldn't mind. But other stuff is just like, yeah, I don't even know what that is, dude. Like, it's just, clearly they're not interested in supporting that. I mean, Portal doesn't have that problem because you don't need games specific to it. I don't know. Like, I don't think it matters, really. Like, Sony's big enough to absorb the cost or the losses on those things, and I guess they factored that all in, and eventually that team will get laid off, and that'll be the end of it. Or they'll do a PSVR 3 for some reason. I don't know. Like I don't understand what they're doing in the VR department.
Or any of this. I mean, the Slim, I guess, makes more sense if you can turn a profit on your hardware going forward and make it. You got to
modify the hardware somehow in terms of if you can make that smaller, even if you just save money on shipments. If you can ship 100 more PlayStation 5s in the same truck because the box is smaller, that counts. Anything like that. The Portal, I don't know
why.
I guess it's filling what they perceive as a niche, but like we'll see how it sells after the scalpers are done.
Feels like a niche of a niche. By the way, those are back in stock. In Walmart, you can buy them right now.
Yeah, and they don't seem to be vanishing immediately, oddly enough.
You're right, Matt. Yeah.
And nobody's bragging about the sales in Europe, from what I see.
Yeah.
One source started putting out sales numbers from Spain specifically for some reason this week.
Because we know why, because it made it look good.
But because the Portal was way down. It was below everything else.
Then they were trying to make it look bad.
And even the PlayStation was up, and it was just sort of like, well, we're gonna talk about Europe numbers, and it's like, yeah, but like it doesn't. I mean, it's not like the Xbox looked good either. I don't know who you were a fanboy of releasing that, but basically it was like in areas where scalpers aren't running rampant, it seems like the Portal is selling about normal, like what you would expect that object to sell.
Yep. To me, of all of those things, only the PlayStation 5 Slim makes any sense at all.
Yeah, I mean, that's really just a refresh. I mean, it's not even they're selling it as a separate thing. They're just saying that's what the PlayStation 5 is going to be from now on.
Look, and I'm not delusional. I don't think that PlayStation working on PlayStation VR 2 or PlayStation Portal has taken away from game development. Like, I don't think that that's why there was one first-party exclusive this year. I'm not stupid. But you're spending a ton of money on this hardware that could be diverted towards game development.
Yeah, I guess technically there were exclusives on VR 2.
Because I'm going to show you a slide in a minute that is going to be one of the most eye-opening things you may have ever seen in the games industry. I'm not exaggerating. That is not hyperbole. And it's going to tie back to this slide. And I'll explain it in a second when it all ties together. Let's move over to Xbox. 21 million units sold. Now, that is from Statista. I don't know how accurate that data is. It is the only source that I could find that was confident to report hardware sales data for Xbox Series. And it says it is sold around 21 million units. To be honest, the 2-to-1 ratio is the way PlayStation and Xbox has been for the last 15 years. It has always been this way. Really, these two machines are selling just like the last two generations have, as far as 2-to-1 for PlayStation. Now, instead of focusing on hardware, Xbox put out the carbon black Series S with 1 terabyte of space. Its focus has been on Game Pass, on services, and then acquisitions that lead to an impending avalanche of exclusive games for its platform that has not yet quite arrived. But it's pretty clear to see the first 3 years of both of these consoles, PlayStation had a focus on hardware, Xbox had a focus on software. Fair?
I guess. I mean, but PlayStation 5 had a lot of exclusives for the first few years.
We'll get to that slide.
That's why this year is weird.
We'll get to that slide.
Because I don't think anyone really the mass audience that makes these things, that makes the PlayStation 5 sell double the Xbox, don't care about whatever hardware refresh comes out. I guarantee you go to most of those people and ask them about the VR2 and the Portal, they don't even know those exist.
Yeah, probably not.
Especially the Portal.
Yeah.
It's too new.
Well, yeah, it's because it's only been out for a week or whatever. But I think clearly, if you look at what, maybe not even their strategy, what they've accomplished. Mm-hmm. Xbox has accomplished more with software. PlayStation has accomplished more with hardware. That's fair.
I mean, I would argue that their software is better than their hardware.
PlayStation, you mean?
PlayStation. I would definitely rather play Last of Us 2 Remastered or God of War Ragnarok than buy a Portal.
Okay, well, let's take a look. So here are the first-party exclusives that have been released so far for each console. Now, you can see the asterisk at the bottom there. Other than Demon's Souls Remake, every game on both lists was a new game that has launched since the console's launch. So I included Demon's Souls Remake down there. It's not a new game, but I think a lot of people value that more because the original game was so old. So I think it has more value than the typical like remake or whatever.
Yeah, I mean that game was 2 gens out. So
right. So I wanted to include it on here, even though I didn't include games like that for Xbox, because there's added value in the Demon's Souls remake, I believe anyway.
And it was PS5 exclusive.
Right.
Yeah, so it wasn't on anything else. It hasn't even come to PC.
Now, I did include games on both lists that were released both for the PS4 and the PS5, or released both for Xbox Series and for Xbox One. Grounded is one on Xbox.
Where's God of War?
Horizon Forbidden West. God of War is not a new game.
Ragnarok?
Yeah. It was not a new game for PlayStation 5. It had released for PS4, and then they put it out for PS5.
Did it?
Yeah.
I thought that was last year.
The PS5 version was. Yeah. So any of, like, Marvel Spider-Man Remastered isn't on there. Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales isn't on the list because it was an old game that was just gussied up for PS5.
But that was a PS5 launch game.
What was?
Miles Morales.
Was it?
Yeah. I bought that when it came out for PS5.
That was a launch game?
They both came out. Yeah, both versions came out at the same time.
I didn't remember that. I thought it was staggered for PlayStation 5.
And Ragnarok was also the same time.
Was it?
Yeah. That came out during the PS5. That was last year.
I guess you're right. Okay. I guess I would add those two then.
Yeah. I mean, Miles Morales.
I guess maybe I looked at it more like, I don't know why I thought Horizon. I don't know why I confused those, honestly. Because obviously I have Horizon on there.
Yeah.
I really thought that God of War was PS4.
No. The first one was. Ragnarok.
No, I mean Ragnarok. Yeah.
Ragnarok came out last year.
And it was for day one for PS5 as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Interesting. I don't know why. I guess I had a brain fart or whatever looking at those games. Because, again, I have Horizon on here, and it's basically the same thing. So it wasn't intentional. I wasn't intentionally trying to slight PlayStation or anything like that. So anyway, we'll tack those on to the end there. But you've got Astro's Playroom, Marvel Spider-Man 2, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, Horizon Forbidden West, Returnal, Final Fantasy 16, which was a third-party exclusive that they paid for, Destruction All-Stars, which was abysmal, Forspoken, which was also a third-party
Destruction
exclusive.
All-Stars was free, at least.
It was.
Not that I ever played it.
Yeah, I did. It wasn't good. Forspoken, another paid third-party exclusive for PlayStation. Both those games from Square Enix, by the way. And I do wonder if Square Enix regrets now it having worked those deals for both of those games. Then Gran Turismo 7, and then God of War Ragnarok, and then what was the other game that Miles Morales. Yeah. And then you move over to Xbox Series X. You have Halo Infinite, Forza Horizon 5, Forza Motorsport, Redfall, which was bad, just like Destruction All-Stars, Starfield, Microsoft Flight Simulator. Now, I will say this. I didn't include, and I don't even know if there were any indie games for PS5 that deserve to be on this slide, but I included them on Xbox, the smaller games, because they were like Game of the Year contenders, or they are Game of the Year contenders. So
that way Minecraft Legends isn't in there.
Right, exactly. So Pentiment made it. I don't think it's a Game of the Year contender, but a lot of people did. Hi-Fi Rush, people love it. And then Grounded, which is another sort of lesser game along the lines of like a Redfall.
Grounded's such a weird journey.
What was?
Just Grounded is such a weird journey, because I remember like coverage being done of that before the pandemic.
Right. Yeah.
Like and then I think the bait, like the early access went up like months after that.
Yeah.
It's been years and years.
Yeah. But I think
they're still adding shit.
Yeah. I think this slide though, I was surprised by it. I did not, because I think they're competitive.
I don't know about that, just in the sense that there's a, well, maybe
PlayStation gets the nod without a doubt.
Gets the nod, but like there's a bunch of stuff in there that Xbox, like, just not exciting from the Xbox, from a mainstream perspective, for whatever reason. Like, I'm not saying I'm not excited. I mean, I love Pentiment, but like Johnny Dickshot, who's gonna go buy a Xbox, he didn't care about Pentiment, right?
Yeah.
Or even Hi-Fi Rush. Really, Hi-Fi Rush was great, but like that's not going to get any traction. Like you're looking at stuff over even the stuff that I don't think was like amazing on PlayStation 5 is stuff that like demos well. Like Forspoken,
well, it looks good.
Yeah, Forspoken looks cool until you play it.
Yeah,
you know.
I mean, I actually like.
I didn't dislike Forspoken really, but it wasn't like a oh my god, thank God I own this console kind of game.
That game definitely needed to be multi-platform for it to have a chance.
It was also on PC, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But it didn't work very well on PC.
If I remember correctly, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, it didn't
new IP?
I don't think it needed to be multi-platform. It just needed to be better.
Well, I just think a new IP on one platform, you're just asking for Doom. Like,
yeah, but also sometimes with like that deal with Sony, that might have been the only way that game got made.
Maybe. That's
like,
true.
Square
That's a good
does
point.
stuff like that.
But I guess my main takeaway from this slide is that the software is closer than you think. PlayStation still gets the nod.
Numerically, yeah, but in terms of like, I mean, Redfall was never going to be anything. 2 Forzas.
I mean, I was excited about Redfall but until I played it.
You were the only one I really knew who thought Redfall had any potential.
Well, it was a cooperative vampire shooter. That sounds fun to me. I think it probably sounds fun to most people until people started saying it was awful, and then it was all over.
That game always looked pretty dumb and bad to me. Like even before they were showing gameplay, I'm like, this doesn't look like. I don't know how to distill it into words, but there's something about Redfall that always made me go,
Well, it's not in your wheelhouse either. Like,
No.
I like shooters, so to me...
But I like vampires and horror things and things like that, and I like some of what Arcane has done in the past, but just didn't seem like it was going to be what... And it's, Arcane making that kind of game was something they'd never done before, and sure enough, later, I don't always subscribe to the idea that a developer that's never done a certain genre can't possibly attempt a different genre, but we had no idea that behind the scenes, like a horrible version of that was happening. It was the stories that came out afterwards about like basically people hoping that Microsoft would cancel the game and shit.
Well, the weird thing is that this game is starting to rebound right now, Matt.
Yeah, they're trying.
Its numbers on Steam are starting to go up. So the work that they're doing is doing something. I think it's too little, too late still, but
yeah, but I mean, at least like credit to sticking with it. I guess.
I mean, because I don't think anyone would blame them if they didn't.
I mean, normally I'd be like, well, not Arcane. Obviously, Arcane was. It sounded like Arcane didn't want to stick with it either. But like, yeah. I mean, it might get to something worth poking at some point.
Yeah,
but,
like years from now.
Yeah, but it's like, okay, sure.
Yeah,
like they're just lucky that nobody really knew that game existed.
Yeah,
the first real game in the acquisition lineup to come out with Starfield for most people.
Yeah. Now, I mean, I'll just be honest with you. It isn't just the numbers. I just feel like, you don't like a lot of Xbox games. I do. Like, I liked Halo Infinite. I think it was great. I liked it. Obviously, I think we both love Forza Horizon 5.
Yeah.
Neither one of us really like Forza Motorsport. I really love Starfield. So did you. I mean, I think Xbox has had some decent games, but obviously PlayStation has
but they're not
way
exciting.
More.
You know what I mean? Like,
to you, they're not.
But I don't think they're exciting in general. Like the Forzas are cool, but Forza, the 5 speaks for itself there to some degree. I'm always happy to see a new Horizon game, but it's just sort of it's slightly better things of something you have already on the old consoles. Whereas if you look over at PS5, there's stuff. Obviously you've got Spider-Man 2 and Ratchet and Clank, but Ratchet and Clank I think gets a little bit of a different pass because it really was showcasing the tech in a way that arguably nothing on the Xbox side does.
Still hasn't.
Yeah, and.
I have yet to see the Xbox Series X exclusive that blows my doors off graphically. Where I'm like, okay, this is why I paid $500 for this thing.
Same. And I thought Motorsport might be that.
And it wasn't.
It wasn't.
No, I hear you. So anyway, I think we're pretty pragmatic on the software, but having it all out, seeing it in one screen, I think it changes your perception at least a little bit between the two.
I would argue that like you don't have any equivalents of Horizon or Final Fantasy.
Yeah.
Or Spider-Man or Ratchet and Clank or God of War. Or Miles Morales. Like there's a bunch of stuff on the PlayStation 5 side that you don't get over here.
Single player games. Yeah. I mean, that's PlayStation's focus with the only thing that you don't. That's why it's now spending a ton of money on games as a service.
The only thing you don't really get on PlayStation in this list is a shooter.
Yeah.
Which and like Infinite,
PlayStation has never managed to really succeed.
They've never really cracked that.
Yeah. I would argue Xbox isn't so good at it anymore either, but
no, it's not. I mean, Infinite has been a real rocky drive. You can't deny that. However you feel about Halo Infinite, and I really wish I liked Infinite more.
Yeah.
And that they'd supported the story and the campaign stuff a little better because I don't care about the multiplayer, but I thought the story was pretty good.
Yep, I agree. And here comes the slide that I mentioned earlier, I teased earlier, is going to change your perception about everything And here it is.
Mm-hmm. Are these their acquisitions and everything?
It's every first-party studio from both. What is that?
Not that you know.
What does that tell you?
Tells me that hopefully Xbox is going to have a flood of content in the future, and PS5 is not. But I gotta look over on the PS5 side and see a lot of fucking 800-pound gorillas that are not on the Xbox side.
Really?
I mean, there are a couple, but like it's stuff like King.
I mean, that's King.
Yeah, but I don't care about.
I mean, I don't play Candy Crush or anything either. I mean, that's just a money play. That's going to make them a shit ton of money. But look at the studios, dude. I mean, come on, man.
What?
But look at all of them. 343, Double Fine, The Coalition, The Initiative,
but I'm talking about
Ninja Theory, Obsidian, Rare.
You're naming a bunch
Bethesda.
you're naming a bunch of nobodies in terms of the mass appeal market. Where are the ones on the Xbox side that are going to get people to buy an Xbox instead of a PlayStation 5?
Well, I mean, 343 Industries makes Halo.
The
Coalition
they already got Halo.
Gears of War.
They got a big Halo game out, and they're selling half what PlayStation 5 is. So what in there?
What is Fire Sprite and Firewalk making, Matt?
I don't know.
What is dude? What are you doing?
But
I'm
talking about Insomniac. I'm talking about Naughty Dog. I'm talking
what's
about
Valkyrie making?
Studio.
What's going to set the world on fire that Valkyrie's making? I mean, you can take half of the PlayStation 5 list and say what you just said about it.
Oh, sure. But like I'm saying that also on that list are Insomniac and Naughty Dog and Polyphony and Santa Monica.
Yeah, but you've got Bethesda, you've got Rare, you've got Tango, you've got id,
sure.
you have Arcane, you have Machine Game.
Tango, come on.
You have Blizzard.
I'll give you Bethesda. I'll give you Blizzard.
You sound like a PlayStation fanboy.
I'm just looking at what I'm expected to play on the Xbox here. And I'll group Sledgehammer, Treyarch, and Raven and all those together into. I mean, unless they start letting them make their own things. Which
they do.
Great.
They take the lead on Call of Duty. Their games
they all
sell
make the
30 million copies a year.
They all make the same thing. It's all Call of Duty, and it doesn't matter because it's also on PlayStation. What I'm talking about, are they going to...
These studios could start making exclusive games. They don't have to stay on Call of Duty forever.
That's what I just said. Are they going to let them make actual games, or are they all going to be trapped in the Call of Duty mines forever, like Activision had them doing?
Well, if you're working in the mine selling 25 million copies a year, that's a pretty good job.
Oh, sure. But like, ask the High Moon guys how they feel about that.
But that's the other thing. High Moon, Beanox, Infinity. I mean,
those guys are just like support for Call of Duty, though. Are they going to use them as developers, or is that all just a big chunk of Call of Duty? Those last 7 guys all just be categorized under one game. That seems crazy to me. I know you got to put another one out every year.
Come on, man.
Come on, what?
You're grasping at straws here.
I am 100% correct on that. They make one game.
No,
that
I
also is on everything else.
I understand you're saying that. I'm just saying.
I'd be excited to play some new High Moon.
Looking at these two lists, come on, man. Come on, man.
Quantity versus quality.
Dude, they just paid $69 billion for these studios. If they weren't worth anything, they would have paid $1 billion for them.
I think this is about an even list.
Oh, my God.
I really do. Like, until we start seeing the output from Xbox, I think we're looking at an even list.
What are you talking about? You have Bethesda.
Yeah, and then
that's just one of like 30 studios.
But then you split out a bunch of other companies that work under Bethesda into their own thing. What the fuck is Alpha Dog? Who the fuck is?
Let's go through the PlayStation list. Team Asobi.
Sure.
What are they doing?
I don't remember.
Ben Studio.
They don't exist anymore.
Fire Sprite.
I don't know what that is.
Firewalk.
With me.
Housemarque. We like them. A lot of people don't know who they are.
You're skipping Gorilla?
No, I'm listing the studios that you should write off under your pretenses.
Right. I am also writing them off. I'm saying what's left there is going to be more important at the market than what Xbox has left.
Okay, maybe it's easier to just pick the ones that matter then. So let's go through this here.
Gorilla,
so you have Gorilla.
Housemarque. If they keep putting out quality
Housemarque is not on that list.
Returnal?
You have Gorilla.
Returnal sold real well.
You have Insomniac. You have Naughty Dog. You have Polyphony. Sony Santa Monica, and Sucker Punch. 6 studios.
What is What is San Diego doing these days?
They're a support studio, like you said earlier.
Support?
They just do like stuff for other studios. Okay, let's go to Xbox. 343 Industries, I would put on that list. The Coalition, I would put on that list.
The Coalition is
Ninja Theory, I would probably put on that list.
I would not put Ninja Theory on that list.
Obsidian, I would put on that list.
Obsidian, I will put on that list if Avowed hits.
Rare, I would probably put on that list.
Rare, I would never put on that list.
Bethesda, I would put on that list.
Bethesda goes on the list.
Tango Gameworks, I would put on that list.
Why does Tango go on there?
What do you mean?
What does Tango do that's so great?
It's what's his name studio. They just put out a bunch of games. Mikami Studio. They put out Evil Within. They put out
the games that have bombed so hard that people are amazed when a new sequel to one comes out. Tango isn't in that list.
Okay.
Id is.
Arcane
is not on that list. Arcane doesn't fucking sell. Come on. That's their whole thing, is they make great games that don't sell.
Machine Games I'll take off the list. Blizzard Entertainment.
Wait, are you taking it off the list in terms of what you're making now?
I'm not counting it.
For this?
Yeah, I'm not counting it.
Nothing happened to them, right?
What?
Nothing happened to them, though, right? They're still
they're still there.
Okay.
Yeah, they're there. That's a pretty damn good studio to be one of your B-level freaking studios. Blizzard Entertainment.
In terms of sales, they are.
Blizzard Entertainment. That gets me to 11. You want to say all the Call of Duty studios as 4 into 1? Okay. I'll do that. That's crazy, but that's okay. Who else we got here? Infinite. Okay. That's 12 to 6.
Okay.
You agreed on those 12. I cut everything out you disagreed on.
Yeah.
So that's double. And I disagree. I think some of these other Xbox studios should absolutely be on those.
And is it going to matter?
Why? Why would that not matter?
Because people don't give a shit about half those things.
How do you know what games they're going to make in the future? All you know is the talent. That's what we're talking about here. IP matters a little bit.
IP definitely matters. Halo didn't move the needle. So I don't really see, obviously the next thing they make Halo-wise could be a revolutionary thing.
The other thing, let's keep in mind here, Matt, all those 6 studios on the left-hand side there, it takes them 7 years to make a fucking game.
Well, it doesn't take that long.
Yes, it does. You know it does. Those Quad A PlayStation exclusives are 7 years. You know that.
Naughty Dog does. Doesn't take the others.
They all do. Insomniac 5.
Years.
Like
4 years.
These guys on the right, they don't take forever to make games either. So they're going to have more output per year. Like, here's what I'm seeing here, Matt. Is it in 2 or 3 years' time, Xbox is going to annihilate PlayStation's first-party output. Annihilate it.
Okay, and what I'm saying is it won't matter because PlayStation's still going to double the sales in hardware.
But why?
Why? Because of brand loyalty, because people just want those games more. I don't know why.
I understand. I agree with that to an extent. It is powerful, but
it's not going to matter.
But eventually, Matt, the numbers are just going to become overwhelming, and no one's going to be able to agree with that anymore.
But also remember that the output of the last 7 there are also on PlayStation.
For now.
For the next 6 years. We'll see about the next generation.
Right. And what happens when they start pulling that shit away from PlayStation?
That's the real shit. If you can only get Call of Duty on Xbox, then I'm going to change my tune.
This slide shows what Xbox has been up to. While PlayStation's been worried about hardware, Xbox has been worried about software.
Yeah, well, because they fucking gutted their software. Well, they didn't. The people who, the idiots who are in charge for the Xbox One did. Yeah. Not the people that are running it now. But, they had to spend an entire generation, and now a generation and a half, because it took so long to get any fucking output out. Not that that's their fault. There was a pandemic, and you got to figure out what happens when you acquire a company, and all that shit gets rearranged. But they spent. When did the Xbox One come out? What was that 2013?
Sounds right.
So they've spent 10 years recovering from what those fucking idiots in the set-top box division at Microsoft did to them. After that second-party group they had, after all those developers they had in-house, that they gutted everything. Shut down Lionhead, shut down all that shit. And it's taken them a decade to get back on their feet to the point that they're about ready to start putting out first-party output like they did with the 360.
Yeah, but they're here now. That's the point.
Well, not yet.
They're pretty much here.
We'd like to think so, but where's Silksong? I know that's not one of those teams, but that's what I'm saying. It's they got to come out. And now there's talk that Hellblade 2 is 2025.
Yeah. So, all I'm saying is that
until they start outputting, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Before I started doing this and putting this data and this information together, I thought it was PlayStation in a landslide. Now, for the next 5 years, I started actually putting this stuff together, and I'm like, wait a minute. All this money that Microsoft is spending is going to pay off. It really is going to pay off. And
I think it's going to pay off for people like us who just want to play good games. Yeah. I don't know if it's going to pay off at the market.
But you're talking about emotions, fanboyism, whatever. And you're right, that's a hard spell to break. No, they buy it because they're PlayStation fanboys. That's what they bought since they were 5, and they're PlayStation fans.
I don't think double the sales is explained by fanboys.
Absolutely it is.
Brand loyalty,
let's
sure.
Be honest.
There's a bunch
people have been happy with PlayStation, and they should be, because they've been great. People have been happy with PlayStation.
Until they stop giving them hard drives.
But seriously, like, even PS4 is freaking amazing. Definitely the best console of that generation. PlayStation 5's kind of tracking that way right now, but not quite there. Like, there's a reason for people to be fans of PlayStation. I'm not saying they're crazy for being that way. They should be. PlayStation has delivered for literally 20-some years consistently. But what I'm seeing now is Microsoft has finally figured out how to attack PlayStation. For years, it was like, well, we'll just put out the most powerful hardware and we'll keep feeding them Gears and Halo and Forza. And that didn't work. And finally, they realized, like, it's not so much about the hardware, it's about the software. And I feel like PlayStation has lost its way here and is focusing on hardware more than the software. And it has given an opening for Microsoft that maybe in a few years they could pry it open and kick the door open. So I just feel like this little exercise for me was really eye-opening. Like, I really thought, even with all the money Microsoft had spent, it was still doomed. And I do not feel that way anymore at all. Like, I really feel like in a few years, if you tell somebody, I'm going to buy the PlayStation 6 instead of the next Xbox, you're probably going to look like a blatant fanboy, because it's going to be so obvious that there are more and better games available for Xbox that the only reason you would buy a PlayStation is because you are just a crazy fan for PlayStation. I think that's what's going to happen eventually.
Well, I'd buy a PlayStation because I want to play Last of Us 4 or whatever it is.
Well, you and I, we're always going to buy all of them. Most people aren't that way. They pick.
I'll tell you this much. I'm getting to the point where maybe I won't buy the next Xbox because everything's on PC.
That's a good point.
Like, if I can just keep up with my PC hardware and not worry about the only advantage of the Xbox,
your PC costs $4,000. Like,
right? But a lot of people have PC and they'd rather play it on PC. That's an ongoing.
I don't think most people have gaming PCs. They have a PC to work on because they bought one.
But a lot of people have gaming PCs that they can then play something redundantly on instead. Even if it's not maxed out or whatever, they can still play to the point that they don't feel the need to spend $500 on a separate piece of hardware that does the same thing.
Yeah,
and that is a down. I'm not saying this costs them the 20 million sales gap between them and PlayStation, but there is something to be said that if you want to play a PlayStation exclusive on PC, you got to wait a year and a half if it even shows up.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to wait that year and a half, frankly. I mean, it's just,
I don't
for
think
some stuff, sure.
The average person who would consider buying a console, like, I don't see them sitting at a PC on a computer chair playing video games. I just don't. Like,
I think tons of people have both.
And I just don't think they want to play PC games. I think they'd rather sit on their couch and play on their console. I would.
I don't.
I would a million times.
I mean, obviously, console sales are stronger than PC stuff, but I do think that you're digging into the Xbox world over there. I mean, certainly Microsoft Flight Simulator. I would love to know the breakdown between people who play that on Xbox versus PC. It's a different market.
Well, that
it's nice that they're
PC.
keeping parity there. It's nice that they bothered to put it on Xbox at all. But I don't know. Like, it's just. The PlayStation brand, even in the generation when they completely fucked up the PlayStation 3 still sold the most in the end.
Ultimately, yeah.
Like, it's and I can't explain that, really.
It's fanboys. They're fans. They've been fans since the PlayStation 1.
But if there's that many of them, why is it not more consistent sales? You know what I mean? Like, why each PlayStation? Why doesn't every PlayStation sell that same amount?
I mean, it really has been, other than the PS3. And even the PS3 in the end kind of got there. It was a late bloomer, but it still got.
I just don't think you can. I don't understand how you can say, like, gaming PCs aren't important, but the reason the PlayStation wins every generation is fanboys.
I don't understand that question at all.
I mean, like, at some point, PlayStation sells more because it has more to offer to the people in the mainstream market. That's what they want.
I don't necessarily believe that.
Then what is it? You think
I just said what?
You literally think there are 40 million dipshit fanboys who just see PlayStation?
I just said they're not dipshits. I said they're smart to be PlayStation fans. They have delivered for 20 years. Listen to what I'm saying, man.
You said fanboy, which is a pejorative term for someone who doesn't think before they buy something. Fans is a different word. If you just mean fans, say fans. If you're trying to make fun of them, say fanboys. That's what fanboy is.
It doesn't matter. It's still the same thing. They're fanboys. They are. Because PlayStation has delivered for them for 20 years. And as I just said, I don't blame them. If I had a product that I love for 20 years, I'd be a fanboy of it too. Like, I get it. I'm just saying they're not looking at things evenly. They're letting their fandom override reality and common sense.
I just don't.
Or they will.
I just wouldn't phrase it that way, I guess. I just think it's more brand loyalty, which is not the same thing as being a fanboy. To me,
actually, what's the difference in between? Because I would say those are the
difference is trusting a brand versus rooting for. It's like the DC Marvel thing. You know, it's like how the DC weirdos who love the Snyder movies say that the only reason, like, they didn't they should be more successful than Marvel, and the only reason Marvel is popular because fanboys don't know any better. It's like, no, they don't like this as much as they like the other thing. And like, maybe that is fandom, and Marvel certainly has a lot of fans. I mean, they're obnoxious.
I mean, there's a lot of fanboys.
Right.
Let's be honest.
And fangirls. Like, don't underestimate how many people go to see the Avengers movie, see hot dudes.
Yeah.
That was one of the brilliant things about Marvel, is there's a different hot dude for everybody.
I never thought about that.
Absolutely. Look at Avengers 1. Had like big muscle guy, Thor. You had like kind of the nice old-fashioned guy in Captain America. You had the tech guy. You had a skinny dude for Loki. Yeah. It all worked out. But what I'm saying is, like, at a certain point you have to be like, look, okay, yes, there's more fans of this than less fans of this, but at some point you have to admit that the product is just not delivering. And it's going to take Xbox a long time to break out of that cycle, and they're going to have. I mean, and the other problem I think that Xbox has had, and you're right that it took them. I think one game longer than it should have to figure out that Gears and Halo alternating was not getting the job done.
Yeah.
The strength of Xbox so far has been shooters, and one of the things they're going to have to break out of is the idea that that's what the Xbox does, and.
A lot of people do, since Halo 1 and 2.
Yeah.
People consider the Xbox the shooter box.
20 years, more than 20 years at this point. And they got to break out of the idea that you can get decent JRPGs on it and that kind of thing, which obviously you can. Like, they release everything on everything now. But that's the thing, is like, what's going to draw someone who would normally buy a PlayStation over to, and you need those boutique
I'll show you what's going to pull them away.
But I don't agree with that in the same way.
Well, you can disagree all you want.
I can disagree all I want, and I'm going to end up being right, because one of the things that I want you to look at here is, show me who in that Xbox list is going to make something on par with what Naughty Dog and Insomniac makes in terms of like a character story driven experience.
If they gave a bunch of those studios 7 years, I believe almost all of them could do it.
Oh, sure, but are they going to make that?
Are they going to give them 7 years? They might.
I don't know about 7 years, but I mean that style of game, the game that the over-the-shoulder sad dad game, if for lack of a better term.
I think the Coalition is definitely capable of doing that. For sure.
They could. You could turn Gears of War into that,
or just start a new IP.
Coalition is pretty much
Ninja Theory, I believe, could do that.
Right, the Coalition they've admitted is pretty much going to do Gears of War forever.
Yeah,
which I think is I think is a mistake.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't hear that.
I mean, they're named after it, so
yeah.
I think 343 is stuck making Halo, and the Coalition's stuck making Gears.
Ninja Theory is one. We'll see if Playground Games can do it.
Ninja Theory can do whatever they want. You're right, but they also have the 7-year development cycle problem.
Yeah, but that's what it takes to make games like The Last of Us Part 2. Playground Games, we'll see. They're trying to make one right now with Fable.
Well, they're trying to make Fable. I'm very curious if Fable is going to work out on that level, or because Fable has always had that thing where it's like, oh, this could be this amazing thing, and then you're like, it comes out and you're like, yeah, that's sort of a.
Bethesda can do it.
Fable's always a little. Bethesda's making one game, and we know what that is.
But it can do it. You just asked the question. I'm answering it. It can do it.
But they're not going to.
Blizzard can do it. And any of those Call of Duty studios could do it. But as to your point, they will probably continue working on Call of Duty.
Yeah,
I'm saying there are studios that can do it, but they have to want them to do it. That's the problem, is wanting them.
Right, is Microsoft going to say, we want to compete with Sony at that game?
It probably should.
It should.
I mean, if you're
because
smart.
That's one of the big draws, was that Uncharted really changed that sort of attitude toward that boutique and exclusive game should be.
Because that's the thing
for good or bad.
With having that many studios, Matt, and you're right, not all of them are capable of making a Last of Us Part 2, but they're capable of making a pretty damn good game every 2 or 3 years that makes sure that there's exclusive coming into the ecosystem continually, while you have your big boys spending the 7 years working on the crazy stuff that changes people's perceptions of the brand.
And I would be more positive about Sony's acquisitions covering that sort of thing if I didn't know that all those acquisitions were making games as a service crap.
Right. And again, I think that'll play into it too. Again, 3 years from now, when you got all these live service games coming out, and some will hit, some won't, but you have Xbox putting out all the single player stuff again.
And it may not matter if Sony can. I mean, I think Sony's sort of at a point now where we're saying it took them one game too long to figure out that Gears and Halo weren't it. Sony might be hitting a similar Rubicon here,
where it's 7 years is too much.
Hey, maybe you might want to take some of those games as service games and pivot them into just being games.
Right.
And my question kind of becomes, are the games that these developers are working on, are they strong enough games in and of their own right to support themselves without that game as a service model on top of them? And that is a real question, because most of the games that are that kind, outside of, I would say, Destiny 2, are not.
Yeah.
You could not have pivoted the Avengers into being a single-player only game. it simply wasn't good enough for them.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
And it's not like the games as a service thing made it any better, really. But like, at least you played that and you understood why it lacked in the places it lacked. You know,
the point is, just look at it like chess. So the object of chess is to take your opponent's pieces off the board. Just in that straight sense of competitive, like how many pieces Xbox has on the board.
But what I'm saying is that Xbox has a lot of pawns.
No, I agree. And PlayStation has more rooks.
PlayStation has three queens for some reason.
I don't want to go that far.
But I would argue that Insomniac,
but a pawn
Naughty Dog,
can take out a queen. If you have 4 pawns, it takes out a queen. Like,
but I don't think a pawn made by inXile is going to take out the Naughty Dog queen. Is what I'm saying. Like, I think they're smarter than that.
We'll see. I think things are looking up for Xbox. Is my point.
I think it's definitely looking up. I don't
think big time looking up.
Oh sure, but they've been at the fucking bottom of the well for a long time, and like maybe they'll get to float up to where PlayStation is.
I think what's going to happen,
but I don't think they're competitive yet.
I think at the end of this generation, they will be competitive, and I think then all bets are off for the next generation, which may be the last. Who knows? But
maybe. Like, I don't know. We'll see if Microsoft can do 2 gens in a row without fucking up, because they've never done that before.
Another important thing, too, is some of these games that they're working on now, like Avowed. So that'll come out here in the next 18 months or whatever. So then you look ahead to whenever they're getting ready for the next Xbox or the next PlayStation or whatever. And if people really liked Avowed, suddenly the sequel to Avowed is like a year away. And people are like, I really love Avowed. I can only play Avowed on... All that stuff matters, and we'll see how it all plays out. But in 3 years' time, like, I think things are going to look drastically different in the landscape.
They're going to have to be amazing to drag people away from their PlayStation library.
Yeah, I agree. They are dyed-in-the-wool PlayStation fans. There's no doubt about it. Again,
not even just fans. I mean, like, if you bought all these games for a generation or maybe 2 generations on PS4 and PS5, and you can carry all those games forward to the PS6, but you can only afford 1 console, you're buying a PS6.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how strong the backwards compatibility thing is. Like,
it's not about backwards compatibility. It's about perceived... Like
losing
investment.
everything that you invested in.
It's about perceived investment.
Yeah. Even though you can always go back and play those games.
It's the only reason I sold a fucking iPhone after 12 years.
But I mean, look, Matt, if you own the PlayStation 5, you still have it. You can still go back and play that whole library.
But consumer brains don't work that way.
But that's why I argue that like backwards compatibility doesn't matter, because nobody cares. Nobody goes back and plays old games. But when
that launch day hits, it does matter.
Maybe.
And maybe it shouldn't. But it does.
Yeah.
Like, not losing your library because you switched consoles is going to be a real thing to people who are that heavily
Even invested. If you're right, they may never even use them. Like, I don't. Like, I hardly ever go back and play games.
Sure. I mean, I would probably use PlayStation backwards compatibility more if there was more storage space.
Yeah.
But, like, it's not... I mean, you can do the external hard drive and it's fine. But, yeah.
Or you could finally install the expansion I bought you last Christmas.
Good. I mean, the PS4 stuff just goes on the external drive. It's fine. Yeah. It doesn't need the
It doesn't need the faster drive.
But I do like having all the Yakuzas in one place.
Nope. Okay, well, we're at the end of this discussion, so let's give a letter grade for the first 3 years of both platforms. Let's start with PlayStation 5. What's your letter grade for the first 3 years of PlayStation 5?
I'm going to give that a B+.
It's exactly what I was going to give it.
But if this year's PlayStation lineup had been as strong as the last 2, it would have been an A.
Yeah.
Like, they were an A until this year, I think.
I mean, I was a little surprised to see how...
They were just talking first-party output. They were an A until this year.
Yeah. I was a little surprised to see how few games there were, honestly, for PlayStation, but then Xbox doesn't have any more.
It was kind of hard to notice given the release schedule this year.
Yeah.
Like, it's weird, like, the packed 2023 release schedule kind of saved them from that perception.
Yep. So I agree. B+ is exactly what I was going to give them as well. Hardware's good. I have no problems with it other than the storage. Like, it's 3 years old. I haven't had any issues with it at all. Solid state, running great. Software has been spotty. This year's been terrible for software.
I have one hardware issue. But
yeah, you had like the weird
LAN disconnected cable, which actually, that is annoying enough to me that I am actually thinking about a Slim.
I don't blame you. That is really annoying.
Like, I would wait and see if they'd fix that issue on the Slim.
Yeah.
But I'm actually thinking about that.
Okay, so I agree. B+ for PlayStation 5. Let's go to Xbox Series. First 3 years. What's your letter grade?
I'm going to say a C+.
You're higher than me. I would have said a C flat.
I think I like Starfield more than you did.
Probably. That's probably it.
That's literally it. That's all it is.
You're probably right. Yeah, I would give it a flat C. Again, I'm not rating it on what could happen or what's going to happen, which is what I talked about a lot here over the last 20 minutes or so. I'm talking about what has happened. And what has happened has been average. The hardware's okay. Like, some of the quick, like, swapping stuff hasn't worked exactly how I thought it was going to. Like, the software output to me has been not good enough. They need more exclusives. Game Pass for me, that's a pretty big deal.
It's cool.
And I've found that I've actually enjoyed it more than I thought I would.
Yeah, and it saved me buying some things that I'm curious about.
Absolutely. And let me, like, sample some stuff that I wouldn't have never tried either. So there's a lot of value in that. But so I think most of my C is built up by Game Pass because the software, first-party software output has been bad.
Yeah, mostly Game Pass and the fact that it's slightly more powerful. So
third-party stuff plays a little better sometimes.
It's been playing a little better. But in terms of, like, first-party output, I mean, it's been mildly abysmal.
Yeah.
I mean, I like Horizon 5 a lot. I like Starfield a lot. Everything else,
take it or leave it, pretty much. Yeah.
I mean, Halo was fine. Halo was good, but like, because like the main problem with Halo Infinite was stuff related to how they've kind of failed the multiplayer support, and like people didn't like the direction they took them, and I don't care about that. I just cared about
the campaign.
The campaign, and campaign was fine.
It's okay.
It was the best Halo campaign since since Reach. Which is saying almost nothing.
I'd agree with that. Yeah.
But I didn't like 4 or 5 at all.
Yeah,
so.
And I barely did. I did enjoy them, but barely, literally by the skin of their teeth. It definitely wasn't Halo to me. This game felt more like Halo.
Right. That's a good way to say it. I felt like I was playing Halo again after years and years of playing this stupid Promethean game that kept using the Halo name for some reason.
Yeah. So anyway.
Yeah. I might have gone a little higher if Forza Motorsport had been decent.
Instead of a throwaway. See if you guys have been given any grades in here. It looks like Cinetike has the same problem you do with the LAN cable. I have no problems with that, by the way. Mine's fine.
Yeah, that seems to be a system-to-system issue.
Yeah. Cinetike also says Xbox will need a The Last of Us style or Zelda style crazy killer new IP. Not sure if it's even possible. Well, Zelda is not new IP.
Zelda style.
Oh, okay. Meaning, I don't know.
As in something that competes with one of those games on the same. Either a big narrative, like epic, dramatic game like The Last of Us, or a big open world, freeform, innovative game like Tears of the Kingdom. They really don't have anything on those low. I mean, theoretically, Fable could be the latter, but I doubt it.
Yeah.
But I might be wrong. Who knows? I mean, Fable has always sort of been an underachiever to me, as much as I like those games. But they're not being made by Lionhead now, so who knows?
Yep. So there you go. That's our 3-year check-in on the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X. And maybe, Matt, right now, we should just put our flag in the ground and say we're never going to call it next gen ever again from this point forward.
I believe that when I don't do it.
But anyway, there you go. That's our 3-year report cards for the next gen consoles for the last time.
Next time it'll just be gen.
Yeah. Well, I think now we'll call it current gen. 3 years is our moratorium. All right, we're going to move on. We have 2 games.
Longer they're here.
Yeah, exactly. We got 2 games to talk with you about in today's episode. Let me check the time real quickly. It looks like we have exactly the right amount of time to discuss them. The first one we're going to talk about is a game that kind of fell through the cracks over the last couple weeks because we had such other big games to talk about, and I didn't have a chance to play it. And then this week I did because there were really no releases at all, and that is Detective Pikachu Returns. Matt, what did you think of the Detective Pikachu movie?
I liked it.
Did you? I was pleasantly surprised by it.
It was a pretty solid interpretation.
Yeah.
I like that they just put the fucking Pokemon up there in live action and called it a day. Like, they didn't try to make it, we have to make this Pokemon look like a real thing, a movie on. No, just put the fucking Pokemon on there. It's great.
And it works somehow.
Yeah. Ryan Reynolds' Pikachu works. It was good. I mean, I do think it probably should have been Danny DeVito, but it was fine.
So the first Detective Pikachu was a 3DS game. And now the sequel, Detective Pikachu Returns, is a Switch exclusive. And both games were polygonal, but obviously this new Switch game has received at least a little bit of a graphical upgrade, but not much.
It definitely looks better than the 3DS, and that's about it.
Yeah, not by much, though. This game is set 2 years after the last game, and the film, by the way. However, this game...
So this is in continuity with the movie?
It is in continuity.
Interesting.
Because
I don't know how you make the first game and the movie. I mean, there's...
So between the 2 games, it covers everything that's in the movie. So the first game for 3DS actually left off, and then the movie continued forward, and now this game covers the gap from the old game in the film. So the shame about this really, though, is that if you've watched the movie, the big plot twist in this, you know it already. I'm not going to ruin it because some of you may not have watched the film, but...
Is it related to Pikachu?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so I'm not going to ruin the big plot twist, but if you've watched the movie, the story in this is going to feel like old hat to you. But it does follow junior detective Tim Goodman. He's still searching for his missing father, Harry. That was a big crux in the first game. He never did find him. Again, I'm not going to ruin what happens in the film around all that stuff. But that's where the game picks up. So the first game, there was this crisis. So this town, Rhyme City, is an anomaly in that it is the only place where Pokemon and humans live in harmony together. And Pokemon aren't forced to live in the balls. They're allowed to be outside of their balls and roam around. And for a long time, that was great. But in the first game, there was this kind of a virus that took over Pokemon called R that made them violent and dangerous. And so a big crux of the story in the first game was hey, we used to live alongside these Pokemon. Now they're going crazy and they're trying to kill me. So there's the first game had almost racism undertones to it because the way that people were treating the Pokemon, because there was just a couple bad apples that were spoiling the whole bit. You get what I'm saying. And this one,
I kind of stopped listening after you said that Pokemon live in the balls.
Oh.
Pokeballs. You gotta call them Pokeballs.
Okay.
Important.
Well, they're allowed to be outside the Pokeballs in these games, or in this town, and that's what sets it apart. So in the last game, the R virus shows up. It makes the Pokemon act crazy. They solve it, and the R virus goes away. This game is set 2 years after that. However, he still hasn't found his father, Harry.
Wow, he's very tall.
Well, it's 2 years, Matt.
Right.
He's
taller than the cops.
Really sprouted up.
He's got nothing to fear.
Yep. So anyways, 2 years after the last game, and yet another wave of crime has hit Rhyme City. So Tim and Pikachu are on the case. And as it turns out, so you get medals because you guys have been a tandem, a crime-solving tandem for the last 2 years. And at the beginning of the game, the mayor gives you a medal or whatever. In the middle of the ceremony, a big Pokemon flies in and causes all this havoc and blah, blah, blah. They're oh no, is the R virus back? Is it something new or whatever? That is the first part of the plot in this. But the plot really, and this is crazy, Matt, in this game is really about not trusting the police. I'm not kidding.
Yeah, I believe it.
So
a lot of detective stories are that.
But the kids are playing this game.
The kids are never too young to learn.
It might be a little young to tell kids not to trust the police. I don't know.
2023? I don't know.
So anyway, the first big case happens. There's this mansion, and this jewel is stolen from the mansion. And you go there, and your rival is this police detective. Because you're the private eye guy working, in the weeds or whatever. And this other guy is a cop who officially works with the police. And you're rivals. He's trying to solve cases before you are. As you get into this game, you find out that guy is a freaking slimeball who's lying all the time and completely cannot be trusted. And that's really the theme of this game. As you get into the heart of it goes to some kind of dark places. I was surprised. I was really? You're teaching me that cops can't be trusted? My age, no big deal. 5 or 6 year old playing this game, and believe me, this game is targeted at 5 or 6 year olds.
I mean, we learned that from Streets of Rage back in the day.
Matt, this is if watching this B-roll.
Only trust your fists. Police will never help you.
So I'm sure watching this B-roll, you're probably watching, it's like a detective puzzle adventure. It's really not. This is really more of an interactive novel. Because there is gameplay in the game, and there's detective mechanics and all this crap, but it's all automatic. Even more automatic than Alan Wake 2's detective stuff.
Yeah, I think a lot of people sort of, when this first came out, the original expected to be Phoenix Wright with Pikachu.
Objection.
And it is not.
No, it's not. It's not at all. So yeah, it's basically a graphic novel or a visual novel that you play through with a plot that at times is shockingly adult and other times is shockingly juvenile. It's really weird to have both of them in the same game. And I understand Nintendo typically is very good at making games that both adults and kids can play together.
It's also weird that the insides of the buildings are modern apartments, and the outsides are Studio Ghibli,
right? Yeah, there's not a consistency
rustic,
there.
Cozy European design.
Yeah. it's very wordy, this game, and you have to talk to everybody because you will go through like 20 pages of dialogue, and then finally that character will say something that is actually a clue. So you just have to go dang, dang, dang. Like for the first
the clue highlighted in a different color.
Yeah, exactly. And then a little thing pops up that says, "Oh, you have an interrogation clue." And after you've collected enough clues, eventually the game sends you to the deduction screen, where it has like all the clues that you've collected, and then it gives you like this multiple choice quiz, Matt, that literally could be solved by like a 2-year-old. It's so weird. This game is like, in one moment it feels like it's made for 3-year-olds. The next moment you're like, wait a minute, they're talking about the mob and like corruption. It's got a weird dichotomy to it.
The Pokemob.
Yeah, the Pokemob. That should have been the lower third. The Pokemob. So anyway, you talk to people's testimony, you gather clues. There's also like things that you just hunt around and you find that are clues on the ground. And then you go to the deduction interface, you come to your conclusions. You talk to the humans, Pikachu talks to the Pokemon, so you're like this team of like interrogators where you're interrogating the human and then your Pikachu interrogates the Pokemon to get information out of them. And you get clues from both of them, by the way. Sometimes the Pokemon actually have better clues than the human beings do. There's not much actual gameplay. You already saw like that QuickTime event I showed you where Pikachu's trying to run up Executor? How do you say that Pokemon?
Executor.
Or
Executor, I
yeah.
guess.
And then you just...
That's the lawyer version.
Mash the A button. And that's pretty much how all the QuickTime events in this game are. You just mash. But those are pretty much the only interactive parts of the game. Like, you do run around Rhyme City, but you already saw in the B-roll, it's literally one city block with like 4 buildings. Mm-hmm. And it's like this weird thing where you can't control the camera, so you're always running towards the camera trying to get out of the buildings, and it's just awkward and weird.
It's no Yakuza.
Yeah. So it includes the same plot twist as the film. And between the two games, you get the whole plot of the film, which is kind of disappointing. But at the same time, I would argue that it kind of wraps up things a little better. Because if you remember at the end of the movie, Matt, it became like a disaster film.
Right.
And it kind of jumped the shark. Like I thought
every movie has to end with a giant blue light in the sky.
Right. Like I thought it was a pretty good movie, and that kind of ruined the movie for me. This game wraps up the story way better. I'm not going to spoil how or why or whatever, but it has a more satisfying conclusion than the film did, which is kind of surprising. But as I said, there's not much gameplay. The gameplay that is there is mostly QuickTime events. Otherwise, you just navigate your way around these tiny environments that still require loading screens between each tiny area. It's like, Matt, you go into one room and you go to the next room. It has to load the next room in.
Well, look at all that fur shading.
And dude, the loading times between the rooms, it's like 5 seconds. I don't know what went wrong with this game's development, but there's all kinds of technical issues with it. Really, the biggest gameplay...
It is interesting how much load time is on the Switch, given that there are no discs.
Yeah, they're cards. I don't get it either.
I mean, the cards just sort of... I mean, they do keep the data on the card, don't they?
But
even when you install them, they have a lot of load time.
It's weird. I don't get it either.
Just not enough RAM, I guess.
Yeah. The big gameplay addition to this game compared to the last game is mounts. So eventually you get the ability to be able to ride Pokemon around. And let's see, there's like, you get like each Pokemon that you ride has abilities. So one of them has the ability to track scents. One of them can see through walls. One of them you can use to push heavy objects out of the way. There's also some like top-down stealth segments in the game that are just as easy as the rest of it. They're almost like a joke. There are side quests in the game. However, one thing I will say if you decide to play this is make sure you complete them when they come up, because there are points in the game where once you go past them, you cannot go back and complete the side quests. And most of the side quests and the main quests in this are pretty much fetch quests. This whole game is kind of just one big fetch quest, which is why it feels more like a visual novel than an actual like puzzle adventure.
I like that there's cop Pokemon.
Oh, is there a cop Pokemon?
Well, there's like those electric dogs.
Oh, he is a cop. Yeah,
no, but those electric dog. There's like 3 of them in that shot. So like, I guess that's just what those Pokemon are cops.
Well, they introduced that Pokemon. It says like believes in law and order or something like that, which is kind of funny. One thing I will say about this game, though, and it was true of the first one as well, is you do learn a lot about Pokemon. Like, the first time you come into Rhyme City, those sheep Pokemon flow by, and they give you, like, the whole background on them, like, how they operate. They float from town to town. If they find a house that they like, they go inside and they leave their cotton all over the inside of the house. Like, that continues throughout the entire game. You can continually learn new things about Pokemon that you probably didn't know before. Whether there's value in that for you or not, I think that's on a person-by-person basis, but it's there. As I said, the game is very easy, and it really is made for kids, and there are moments that are almost insulting for adults as far as the puzzles and, like, the deduction stuff. It literally just happens almost automatically.
I would never get used to how big they are.
Well, I mean, it also shows you the size of the Pokemon.
Yeah, that's gigantic.
Yeah.
Even that one shot in the street where you just look down the alley and there's this giant fucking thing, like, I would never be okay. Like, living around these I mean, I know that everyone grew up around it, it's normal to them.
Yeah.
But it's just like, even if you're like from this world, but you're used to them being in balls all the time.
Yeah.
Like, and you come to this city, you're like, what the fuck? Yeah. Walk around a corner, there's a Clefable the size of a Volkswagen right in front. It's like, yeah, that's weird.
That's why Rhyme City's special, man.
I guess so.
The game should have difficulty settings, because if you want to play this with your kids, you're not going to want to. It's too easy. So they need to find a happy medium between what they have now and not making it too difficult. I would also say that this is one of the worst looking games of this generation. I mean, it's a sequel to a 3DS game, and I think it looks like a 3DS game in high res. Again, the loading screens are constant. Like, the voice acting, though, is surprisingly good. The performances are great. However, you can only spackle over the writing so much, and what they're talking about is really inane. But they do a good job writing it, and they do a good job voicing it. It's just that, what do you talk about in a game like this? It's not very interesting. Its Metacritic average right now, Matt, is 66, which is way too high. And I just want to circle back to the Metacritic score for Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, where people were like, nope, 5 is the right score, 5 is the right score. I will go to my grave saying Modern Warfare 3 is 8 times the game that this game is, that is sitting at a 66 on Metacritic right now. I don't know what these people were playing, what kind of drugs they were on while they were playing this game, but this game is like a 4. Like, it is nowhere near a 66. Like, I would only recommend this game to, like, 3-year-old Pokemaniacs. Like, if you have...
And most 3-year-olds can't read.
Right, so. And you have to read a lot, which means you're going to have to read it to them, which means it will drive you bonkers playing this with a kid, which means I actually recommend it for no one, Matt. I do not recommend anyone buys this game. It's $50 also, which way overpriced for a game that obviously isn't up to scratch technically. I mean, from a craftsmanship perspective, this game is low budget, low rent, and it should have cost low budget, low rent. And again, even if you really liked the film, it spoils the plot in this game. So even like the big twist in the game, it's just kind of you're left limp. Now again, it does finish things off a little more in a more satisfying way. And one thing I'll say this too that was weird is, like, this game does not leave the door open for a sequel. There's no cliffhanger. There's no weird little thing that happens. It literally wraps up the whole plot, and it's done.
Interesting.
Which I was shocked
Especially
by.
interesting considering that, like, there's still talk of another movie.
No, I'm sure they're going to, because that movie did huge. I guarantee there's going to be another movie.
Yeah. Didn't do Sonic numbers, but it did all right.
But I guarantee there's going to be another game, too, so I don't know why.
Although, I don't know. I mean, after Mario, they might be hungry for stuff of that caliber or nothing.
That's true.
In terms of, like, revenue.
They're
making a live-action Zelda movie which with the guy who produced Morbius and the guy who wrote Monster Trucks.
It's going to be a disaster.
And the guy who directed the Mortal Engines, or like that movie is going to be
cruising for a bruising.
Like you just had the biggest surprise animated hit of the last 5 to 10 years. And you're making a Zelda. You sat on the Zelda license for 30 years.
Nobody wants a live-action Zelda.
Live-action Zelda movie.
Nobody wants that.
Nah,
I've seen enough fanfic already on YouTube. I don't need more of it. So anyway, I was really disappointed in this game. I had played the 3DS version for like an hour. I think maybe we had Vincent review that for us back in the day when it came out. So I had very limited experience with the first game, but I expected more from this than I got. I would not buy this. I would buy this for maybe $20-25, but even then I struggle. This is just one of those things where like the game's like, I think I finished it in like 12 hours or whatever, and I was just like, I just wasted 12 hours of my life.
Yeah, I mean, it's a funny idea, but like that's
the other thing too is like it's weird to me that Pikachu talks like Danny DeVito. It was weird in the movie. It's weird in this. It's just like Pika Pika, and then blah, blah, blah. It's like, how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, well, only he hears him, right?
Right. Yeah,
that's how it works.
And there's jokes about that. There's actually a joke about the movie in this game. He goes home and his sister is there, and they talk about the movie. They're like, well, there was a movie based around this that came out a couple of years ago, and the sister goes, and I wasn't in it. Why wasn't I in the movie? It's funny. Like, they actually break the fourth wall, like, talking about the movie. That was, like, the only clever thing in the game, to be honest. So, yeah, Detective Pikachu returns. Don't let it return. You can just let it stay wherever it is. And I don't think you'll be any worse for the wear. Again, after I finished playing this, I was like, man, what could I have done with those 12 hours that would have been better and more constructive? A lot. I could have done. I could have got ready for the new GameFace in 2024 with that time instead of playing this. But I digress. So I recommend staying far away from Detective Pikachu Returns. Next up, and our final topic for today's show, and I'm not going to talk about this game very long because this is very niche, but also very, very cool, and I wanted to get it on your radar. And Matt, I'm surprised that you didn't turn me onto this game. Have you heard of it?
I've heard of it.
Little Goody Two Shoes?
Yeah, I don't know much about it. I just have to, every time I see it pop up in something, I get the Adam Ant song stuck in my head.
Goody Two, yeah. Goody Two, Goody Two Shoes. This is a prequel to a game called Pocket Mirror. Have you heard of that game?
Only in conjunction with people saying that this is a prequel to it.
Yeah, I had never heard of Pocket Mirror before. I don't know how it slipped under my radar, but this is apparently the prequel to that game. Obviously, I haven't played it. It is an adventure. Let's see how I can describe this. It is an adventure RPG lesbian life simulation set in an extremely religious hamlet. Piece all that together.
Okay, I do remember. Actually, no. What's it a prequel to?
Pocket Mirror.
We've talked about that before.
Have we?
Because that description rings a bell. I remember you talking about that in the old studio, like in the where we were when we were in the insurance or the real estate company.
Okay.
You definitely mentioned that at some point.
Interesting.
I remember that.
I don't remember it at all.
I do remember. Now that you say that, I remember it.
Interesting. Well.
It wasn't like a topic or anything, but you brought it up at some point.
Okay.
It came up.
Well, as I said, this is an adventure RPG lesbian life sim survival game. You play as a girl named Elise. As the game starts, you're an infant, and this old woman finds you because I guess your parents had died or they had left you or whatever, and this old woman finds you in the woods and takes you home and raises you. But eventually, the old woman dies and leaves Elise on her own. And from that point forward, she lives a tough life. She does hard labor. She's like a maid for all the people in the town. She's basically miserable. She's poor. She can't make ends meet. She doesn't have enough money for food. And she's like, there's got to be a better way. And so she dreams of having a better life filled with money, basically. And so she embarks. Basically what happens is a girl shows up at her door, or she comes home and finds that someone has ransacked her place. She goes out to her shed out back, and she finds this girl hiding out there. Love interest number one. The girl is like, I don't know how I ended up here. Like, I don't know where I am. So you bring her in and you let her stay in your house and you make her your maid, basically. Well, as time goes on, you start to realize that there's something special about this girl. She's not just some maid or some person that you found. And she has known about you and the town for a long time and was subconsciously drawn to the town. And that's kind of what sets everything into motion. Once she's living with you, you go out into the yard and you find this pair of red shoes in a box. You're trying to get your garden going, and instead you dig up this box that has red shoes in it. And the shoes start talking to you, and this girl that you just met starts filling you in. And basically what you have to do is you make a deal with this god for fortune, and you have to go into the woods and find 3 gifts to give it to the god, and he will grant your wish of making you rich forever. And that's sort of the objective of the game. Elise ventures into the eerie woodlands, and there she has to endure these trials where you explore areas and complete a bunch of simple puzzles while you avoid enemies. There's really no combat in this game at all. And And even the RPG part of it is pretty light. Like, you don't necessarily level up per se. It's really more of a survival game and a time management sim, I guess is the best way I could describe it. A big part of the plot, too, is that, as I said, the hamlet that you live in is really religious. And they think that either you are a witch or the girl who just showed up to your house is a witch. And a big part of the game and the plot is trying to guide the villagers away from thinking that you're a witch, because they'll burn you at the stake. Like, this is kind of where you're living. But also, it's a romance sim. And you have 3 potential targets in town that you date up, and they're all girls. There's no heterosexual hookups in this at all. It's all girls with girls in this game. And you go on dates with the girls, and a big part of the game is managing your time. There's a clock that turns. There's like 4 different time periods in each day. So you have basically 4 slots in each day to do what you want to do. If you go on a date with any of the girls, that takes one of the slots. If you try to accomplish a mission, that takes one of the slots. So a big part of the game is like figuring out what you want to accomplish. Okay, I want to romance this girl and make this girl my girlfriend or whatever. But I also need to move the plot forward and make sure I'm getting those gifts to deliver to the gods so that I can become rich forever. And juggling all that stuff is where the challenge in the game comes into play, basically, is making sure you can get stuff done. At first, it's not a big deal, but as you get further into the game, like, the survival stuff really starts to rear its head after a while. You have to manage matches, meaning, like, matches that you light your lantern with, your sanity, and your hunger. The hunger... The only way that you can satisfy your hunger is to get money. That's the only way. Every once in a while, a character will give you like a loaf of bread or whatever. But for the most part, to stay alive in this game, you have to constantly be completing things to get the money that you need to buy the bread. And eventually, it becomes a nightmare. Also, managing the matches becomes really hard after a while. I struggled to find places to get more matches. Eventually, over time, the crux of the game is survival and making sure that you're satisfying those 3 different needs that you have at all times. There are plenty of side quests to distract you. There's an awesome map screen that shows you like the whole hamlet, and there's icons that'll show you like, hey, here's a side mission. Here's where you go for the main mission. Hey, you're already on a mission. Here's where you need to go to do that. Now, that's handy. However, one big complaint that I do have is that there's no fast travel in this. And it does get annoying running through the same screens like over and over again, no matter how pretty those screens are. And I don't know if you've been watching this B-roll, Matt, but this game is gorgeous, man. Like,
yeah, it's nice.
It is beautiful. Like, the way the lighting from the trees falls on the character models, like the shine and sheen on her hair, all the animation is just incredible. And as you start to play more in this game, I found myself just stopping and watching. Like, I get into a space and there's just so much stuff going on. There's birds flying everywhere. There's people like doing stuff off on the side. I would just stop and just take in the scene. Like, I've never seen an art style that looks quite like this game. Like, they've done an amazing job. It is just gorgeous pretty much at all times. But like I said earlier, like, you have to manage your time. And here's my biggest complaint about this game was, if you have one bad day, you're kind of screwed. Like, this doesn't have autosave, or like if you go to your saves, it doesn't have like 20 different saves to choose from. Like, you have to manually save at all times. And sometimes it's not convenient to get to the save point before something triggers and happens in the game, and you're just screwed. There are instant death moments in this game where you just die. Sometimes, like, if you answer something incorrectly, you just die. And if you haven't saved, you lose all the progress. So the first thing I would say for anyone who's going to play this, save constantly. I got burned a bunch of different times. So if you do lose health, then again, there isn't really combat in this game, but there are enemies, and you can lose health through that. Healing items for that are plentiful. You never have a problem like being able to heal yourself. The food is always the asset that's really hard to come by. The only way you get the cash is by performing side tasks for villagers. And basically how those work are they're very simple mini games that you play. Like, one of them you'll see in the B-roll here is like Kaboom for the Atari 2600. Like, you're basically just holding a big barrel and apples are falling from the sky and you're trying to catch the apples. It's all very simple stuff like that. And then you get, after you complete each of those mini games, you get graded, and then you get money based upon that grade, and then you use that money to buy the bread. And so if you botch one of those, or if you just mismanage your day and go on dates all day instead of saving money, it turns into like a snowball that's hard to get out of, where you're just always dying. You never have quite enough bread. You're completing one of those mini games just in time before you pass out and die. It becomes a bit of a struggle. So again, make sure you're saving constantly. Also make sure that at every turn that you can, you have as much bread as you can, because that really is the hardest part of the game, is making sure you have enough bread. As far as the love interests are concerned, you go on dates. You have to make time for each one. It can be a challenge. Each girl takes 6 total dates to romance her for good, meaning that she's your girlfriend. Each time you take them on a date, you earn a gem. The writing and the voice acting in this is amazing. Just across the board, incredible. Particularly the dates. Because the dates are where they ponder the idea that they're gay, but they live in this crazy religious conservative area, and if they're found out, they could be killed, or if they think that they're witches, they could be burned at the stake. There's high stakes, I guess.
I see. There's the witch suspicion tracker.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they're trying to figure out exactly, and the game does track it for you to let you know if the Hamlet thinks that you are in fact a witch, and you can go and control conversations with the villagers to shape how they feel about you. So if they start suspecting that you're a witch, seek them out, and then the conversation trees will give you multiple options. You can choose the options that will lead them away from thinking that you're a witch that they need to burn at the stake, basically.
And I assume if you choose the wrong options there, that's how you die instantly.
Yep, and then you have to go back to your last save or whatever. There's other conversations, too, where you die instantly that aren't related to whether you're a witch or not as well. But like I said, there's just tons of cool little animations going on everywhere, like... It's in 2D, so simple stuff like a character swinging on a swing, like, that's hard to animate in 2D. But there's stuff like that all over this game. And again, I just love the look of the game, the charm, how they handle the lighting with the 2D graphics. It's just awesome. One thing I will say, though, is that, like, when you get in conversations, there's, like, multiple art styles that they start sampling, like, start piling in as you do the conversation. Like, it's weird. It feels like there's not a unified art style across the game. Like, one of the stills will be in one art style, and then they'll show a still of the two characters together, and it's a completely different art style. And then they'll cut very quickly to, like, this real-time cutscene that's working in the engine, and it can be, like, hard to follow. And there was a couple times where I was afraid I had accidentally hit the forward button because it gets jumpy. Like, it starts cutting between the different art styles and the cinematics, and it feels a little abrupt and weird at times, but that's just the game. So don't suspect anything is weird like I did. That's just the way that the game is. The music is amazing. I was humming the songs from this game, like, after I played it for the first time, like the overworld theme. Like, I already have it embedded in my head. I can repeat it verbatim already, or hum it verbatim. As I said, the save points are sparing. Save anytime you can. Save as often as you can. There's no detriment to doing that, and it will save your butt from having to replay a lot of sections of the game. And then, Matt, you know I hate musicals, right? Mm-hmm. I've said that many times on GameFace. But there are musical numbers in this game that I loved. They were just crazy and hilarious and weird. They didn't last that long. Like, when you first get the red shoes, she does this crazy, like, dance number in front of the villagers, and the villagers are like, that's the first time they suspect she's a witch. Because they're like, whoa, like, what is that? Like, you're singing about shoes, and, like, you can't do that in this town or whatever. I've never played a game like this, honestly.
Sounds like Rhapsody.
It really is insane, dude. Like, I have never...
Might be. I wonder if it's the same people.
Look at her hair when she runs. It's amazing. Like, the art in this is just incredible, and the animation is just awesome. And the little leaves flowing in front of the camera, and the lighting from the trees. Like, just a gorgeous, gorgeous game. But it also, as someone who likes interactivity, it is very light on gameplay. It doesn't have a lot, so I think for people like that, you may not like it. But I did. Like, I enjoyed the crap out of this game. It caught me by surprise out of nowhere. I really enjoyed Little Goody Two Shoes. It is available, as you can see in the lower third, for pretty much everything. The game costs $20, which is great. That's like the perfect... Like, I haven't finished this yet. I've already played it for like 8 hours or so. Already, I've got my $20 worth, easily. So I highly recommend this game. I loved it. And I know you're probably looking at this like, this doesn't look like the game that Shane usually likes. Exactly. That should. Here's what I'm talking about with the different art styles, like how they jump back and forth from these stills, and like then the talking animation. Like, it just gets weird and like jumbled up, and then it'll cut to a cutscene really quickly. It's just a little awkward at times.
That's a pretty standard anime.
It is,
thing.
yeah. And there's a name for this style of anime, the glass-eyed anime. It's called Toro or something like that. It's from the early 90s. It's like called Toro style or Tono style or something, where the girls all look like their eyes are watering it all the time.
I mean, sometimes that's called moe.
Moe?
Yeah. Although that's usually more fetishized.
Here you're seeing the time of the day change. So every time you complete something big, it cuts to this scene and it shows the time turning to one of the other segments of the day. Here I'm about to die, so that filter that they put over shows you, and I think I'm about to die from, like, sanity. I'll be honest with you.
Are you about to starve to death during a date?
I still haven't, I think I am. I still haven't figured out how to lower sanity. I don't know what you do to lower it. It seems like certain people you talk to lowers your sanity. I have not figured it out. But I think I only died from sanity like once or whatever. So anyway, there you go. That's Little Goody Two Shoes. It's available for everything. It costs $20, and I recommend it to pretty much anyone. I mean, you can watch this B-roll and figure out whether you're just organically attracted to games like this or not. And if you are, buy this game. You will absolutely love it. I had a ton of fun with the game. What do you think of it, Matt?
I mean, it looks cool. I do like the visual a lot. I just didn't get around to it just because I didn't really pay much attention to it. I saw it being mentioned by things. I think it came up in it was in the Game Awards nominees, I think, under,
it was
under art direction, or maybe it was asking for people to vote for it for art direction in the player choice. I can't remember. But it popped up on Steam, I think, on the recommendations. I just didn't pay much attention to it.
I think you'll like it.
It's I get to a point, especially on Steam, where I'm just like, is there anime? Okay, I'm just sort of
filter it out.
I just assume it's porn and let it go.
Yeah,
you know, like,
yeah.
But every once, I mean, it looks to me, it reminds me a little bit of Rhapsody on the PS1, which was the musical.
Yeah, also a musical.
Yeah, which I guess there's a collection of those that came out recently on the PS5.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know if there's going to be anything in this as catchy as "We Are the Most Amazing Pirates."
Yeah,
but
I remember that one. But anyway, we like to use our last segment on GameFace every week to try to turn you onto some smaller games that may fly under your radar, and that's what we're doing with Little Goody Two Shoes.
Yeah. This is actually, well, maybe it's not indie because it is published by Square.
Square Enix, yep.
I don't know. Depends where that came from.
Yeah.
I saw Jeff say that the reason Dave the Diver is nominated is because basically he said indie is a vibe, not a
basically
not a
what we talked about.
Which is, yeah, but then you should call it best indie game, not best independent game.
That's a good point.
Because those two words mean two different things. Indie, like I said, you could get the cover of it's a vibe thing. Independent is not what people say when they describe a game like that. They don't say, oh, that's a great looking independent game. They say indie game. So go with the slang. Don't say the full word because the full word means things.
Yep. All right, we're almost done, but before we go, here's our word from our sponsor, SoundWizardry.com. Experience the realm of extraordinary audio with Sound Wizardry. With a decade-long journey in sound design, we animate your movies and video games with the breath of sound. Our wide-ranging services include sound design, Foley, sound mixing and mastering, audio implementation, dialogue mastering, and the crafting of unique sound effects from freshly recorded material. Our portfolio contains Baldur's Gate 3, Steven Universe, Alan Wake 2, Gwent, Cyberpunk 2077, and more. Visit SoundWizardry.com and let us transmute your vision into an auditory marvel. That's right. For all your audio needs, go to SoundWizardry.com. Anything you work on that's audio related, they can help it, they can fix it, they can make it better, they can make it awesome. They have done it for us, they can do it for you. They have done it for some of the biggest video game releases of 2023. Always good to see people in our community thriving and succeeding, and that is exactly what's happening at SoundWizardry.com. And with that, we got to call it. We went way over today. I talked about Little Goody Two Shoes way longer than I should have. So much for my 10 minutes that I was going to spend talking about it. So I apologize. So we can't do any Q&A. We actually have not done Name That Game for like 3 episodes.
Can't do any Q&A, can't drink, can't smoke.
Yeah.
What do you do?
Goody two, goody two, goody goody two shoes. So anyway,
my head for the rest of the day. So that's.
Well, listen, if you want to support us, the easy way to do it is at Patreon. Head to patreon.com/SIFTD, SIFTD. You can pledge whatever you want there, and you get something for every dollar you pledge. Even for $1, you get access to our exclusive forums and the ability to create your own forums that other people can join, and the rewards just go up from there. $4 gets you all our content early, GameFace 4 days early, Pactor Factor a week early. If you can't help us with that, you can always just go and review the show on whatever podcast service you're listening to. You can like, you can subscribe on YouTube, you can do all that stuff. You can leave a comment on YouTube. That helps with the algorithm. There's so many things you can do to help us, and not all of them require money. And any of them that you do, we will thank you for them very, very much. So thanks to everybody in the chat. I'm really sorry we didn't get to any Q&A today. Norix Nessie, thank you for Twitch Prime. I see you in there. I really apologize that we didn't get to it. Next week, maybe. I did a poor job managing today's episode. That's all on me. So I'll take the hit for that one. But thanks to our chat. As always, you guys fact check us and dig up factoids that we need while we're doing the show. You guys are awesome. We appreciate it. All the Twitch Prime you guys gave us today, again, appreciate that. You guys are awesome. We'll be back next week, and we'll have 2 big games in next week's episode. We'll have Avatar, which I think I'm getting code for that today from Ubisoft. And then we'll also have Dragon Quest Monsters, which is coming exclusively to Switch. I think I get code for that maybe tomorrow or something. So anyway, we'll have 2 big games in next week's episode. We can't wait to see you then. Have yourselves a great week. GameFace is up and out.